Hello everyone, welcome to my channel where I share true stories about infidelity. I'm a pilot, and through my work I've come across many surprising, emotional, and sometimes shocking stories of infidelity. Join me as we dive into these tales. Feel free to listen while you relax, unwind, or even before bed. Next story. Anna has always viewed herself as a fortunate woman. She and Mark have shared nearly a decade of marriage, a testament to their unwavering bond that many around them admire. Mark, a financial executive, stands as a successful individual with a robust career and a serene presence. Anna, a freelance artist, cherishes her days spent at her easel, allowing the natural light to illuminate the room while classical music gently fills the air. They resided in a delightful suburban home, featuring a spacious porch and a quaint garden where Anna nurtured her beloved flowers. Their existence, at least from an external perspective, appeared idyllic, a harmonious blend of career, creativity, and familial joy. Each evening, Mark would return home in a tailored suit, clutching a gleaming leather briefcase. Anna would eagerly await him in the kitchen, her face lighting up as he stepped through the door. They would share dinner together, exchanging tales of their day, Mark discussing the significant projects he was engaged in, while Anna revealed fresh inspirations for her artwork. But recently, those once flawless moments have started to diminish. Mark has been returning home later more frequently, and at times he simply sits in silence, eating, not engaging in the conversations Anna attempts to ignite. When she inquires, Mark claims that work has become increasingly demanding, with meetings that seem to stretch on endlessly. Anna trusts him, for she has always admired Mark's commitment to his profession. Yet, an unsettling sensation has begun to infiltrate her thoughts. Something feels amiss, as if a haze has settled between them, obscuring her vision. That became evident late one night when Mark returned, appearing quite different. His shirt was crumpled, his tie hung loosely, and the scent of alcohol lingered on his breath. He offered an apology, explaining that he had just come from an after-work gathering with colleagues to commemorate the success of a project. Anna chose not to press further. Instead, she smiled, attempting to convince herself that this was merely an isolated incident, that Mark was simply navigating the challenges of his job. But even as she cast aside her doubts, Anna found it hard to find peace. The evenings without Mark rendered the house more desolate than ever. The vacant chair across from her at the dining table stood as a quiet reminder that something in their marriage was gradually shifting, and she felt lost on how to restore it. In the days following Mark's return home in an unusual state, Anna endeavored to suppress her feelings of discomfort. She reassured herself that Mark was dedicated to his work and that social gatherings were a common aspect of the business realm. Yet, despite her efforts, Anna could not ignore the subtle fissures in their relationship, akin to delicate fractures in glass that revealed themselves only when illuminated from the perfect angle. Mark began to return home later and later. Evenings that once belonged to them were now enveloped in silence. Anna found herself waiting up late, hoping for Mark's arrival, only to be met with brief apologies as he entered, weary and worn. Yet, there were subtle signs that Anna could not overlook. For the first time in years, Mark started to adorn himself with cologne before heading to work. His shirts were impeccably pressed, and his phone frequently rested face down on the table, a behavior he had never exhibited before. One day, as Anna tidied up Mark's office, she discovered a hotel bill hidden among the papers. She picked it up, her breath catching in her throat. It was from an upscale hotel in the city, outlining a lavish dinner at the hotel restaurant. She attempted to soothe her racing thoughts, convincing herself that it might have been a business meeting he simply overlooked mentioning. Yet, Mark's silence regarding it only deepened her sense of unease. The more Anna observed, the more peculiar nuances she discerned in Mark's demeanor. One evening, as he indulged in a shower, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Fueled by a blend of curiosity and doubt, Anna reached for it. On the screen appeared a message from an unfamiliar contact. Weekend meeting confirmed. Everything is ready. Anna's heart raced, yet she had little time to ponder the implications. The sound of water in the bathroom ceased, prompting her to swiftly return the phone to its original place. In the days that followed, Anna felt as though she was traversing a delicate balance. She hesitated to confront Mark about what she had witnessed, yet she could no longer dismiss it. Her discomfort grew more pronounced as Mark repeatedly referred to an important meeting scheduled for that weekend. He explained that it was a crucial element of the company's strategy and that he would need to dedicate the day at the hotel engaging in discussions with his colleagues. On the day of the meeting, Anna rose early to prepare breakfast, striving to maintain her calm. Mark appeared slightly hurried, dressed in a more relaxed outfit than his customary formal suit reserved for important meetings. As he stepped out the door, a surge of tension enveloped Anna. She lingered by the door, observing him fade from view, and a resolute decision crystallized within her. She would not allow this cloud of doubt to linger any longer. She was determined to uncover the truth. Anna slid into her car, her heart racing as she trailed Mark from a respectful distance. He navigated through the streets she knew so well, but instead of heading to the office, he pulled up to a luxurious hotel nestled in the heart of the city. The very same hotel that had caught her eye on the receipt earlier. Finding a hidden spot to park, Anna settled in to observe as he stepped into the lobby, where a lively group awaited him. His colleagues, a vibrant mix of youth and style, exchanged warm greetings, their camaraderie radiating the ease of friendship rather than the stiffness of a business gathering. Anna sensed her heart racing. Uncertainty loomed over her as she realized this meeting was far more complex than Mark had suggested. Yet, she chose to stay, even as anxiety swelled within her. With quiet determination, Anna stepped into the hotel lobby, maintaining a careful distance to avoid detection. As the group entered a private conference room, she hesitated. She observed the door shut, feeling as though the realm beyond it was one she was not meant to enter. A few moments later, a hotel staff member stepped out of the room, and Anna seized the opportunity to engage him in conversation. Posing as a meeting room scout, she asked about Mark's group. The hotel staff member, unaware of her true intentions, disclosed that it was an informal meeting, typically featuring private gatherings and entertainment. Anna's heart plummeted at his words. She struggled to accept it, yet the fragments began to align into a vivid image, a vision she had never anticipated witnessing. Anna made her way back to the car, a sense of helplessness washing over her. Uncertainty clouded her mind, yet deep down, she felt the undeniable approach of the truth, a force she could no longer evade. Anna sat in the car, her hands clutching the steering wheel with determination, her gaze locked on the hotel conference room door. With every fleeting second, her anxiety surged like an unstoppable wave. She reassured herself that perhaps she was overthinking, that what lay beyond that door might not be as daunting as it seemed. Yet, the stillness within her rejected that notion. Deep down, she understood that only the truth could liberate her from the heavy weight that enveloped her. After a moment, Anna realized she could no longer remain idle. She stepped into the hotel, striving to appear as nonchalant as possible. The expansive hallway guided her toward the conference room, where Mark and his team were gathered. As Anna drew near, she caught the unmistakable rhythm of music emanating from behind the door, not the gentle melodies typical of a formal gathering, but a vibrant, thumping bass. The sound struck her with a jolt, affirming that this was far from a conventional business meeting. Anna hesitated at the threshold, her hand quivering as it brushed against the handle. The joyous laughter echoing from within tightened her heart, amplifying her apprehension. After a brief moment of inner turmoil, she took a deep breath and slowly nudged the door open, creating a small opening to peer inside. The scene that unfolded before Anna's eyes was astonishing. The conference room, rather than serving as a traditional workspace, transformed into a vibrant mini-club. Tables had been moved aside to make way for a makeshift bar and a cozy dance floor. Wine glasses were filled, and the air was alive with laughter and conversation, harmonizing with the music. Several of Mark's male colleagues lounged on sofas, encircled by young women in stylish attire. These women were not colleagues, but evidently special guests at this informal meeting. Anna scanned the crowd for Mark. There he was, nestled in the far corner, a glass of wine cradled in his hand, engaged in a lively conversation with a young woman, a girl adorned in a tight red dress, her wavy blonde hair cascading around her. She sat near Mark, her laughter ringing out joyfully at his words, her hand resting casually on his shoulder, a gesture of closeness. Yet Mark seemed at ease, leaning in closer, his eyes reflecting a comfort that Anna had not witnessed in him for some time. The scene struck her like a blade, cutting deep into her heart. Anna struggled to accept that the man she adored, the man she had placed her trust in, was entangled in this debauchery. Her legs trembled beneath her, yet she found herself unable to walk away. Instead, she discreetly retrieved her phone and captured a few images through the narrow opening of the door. Uncertain of her next steps, a part of her yearned to preserve the proof, a means to validate that what she was experiencing was genuine, not merely a creation of her mind. As Anna prepared to depart, a sudden noise from behind caught her off guard. A hotel staff member strolled by, his gaze lingering on her with intrigue. In a flash, Anna pivoted, feigning interest in another room. Once the employee had vanished from sight, she glanced back through the door one final time. Mark remained seated, a serene smile gracing his lips, blissfully unaware that his wife was observing the entire scene. Anna stepped out of the hotel, her footsteps weighted with emotion. The air outside felt oppressive, even with the gentle evening breeze. She settled into the car, her hands trembling as she scrolled through the photos she had captured. Each image was undeniable proof, and the pain it brought was deeper than words could express. Mark was no longer the person she believed she knew. On her journey home, Anna found her mind racing with thoughts. She recalled Mark's frequent tardiness, the cryptic messages, the peculiar receipts that had surfaced. All of it had culminated in this pivotal moment, the moment she could no longer deceive herself. She felt a deep sense of betrayal, not just from Mark's choices, but also from the facade he had upheld during their marriage. A facade that now felt empty and untrue. That night, as Mark walked through the door, Anna remained silent. She perched on the edge of the bed, her gaze lost in the void, while Mark stepped into the room, pretending to be weary. He uttered a handful of words about the meeting, words that Anna recognized as fabrications. She offered no reply, merely nodded as if to concede. Yet within her, a tempest of fury and sorrow was gathering strength. Anna realized that silence was no longer an option. The truth had emerged, and it was time to confront it, yet the path forward remained unclear. What she understood was that their marriage, this once flawless existence, would forever be transformed. Anna sat in the stillness of the kitchen, as if the very walls were closing in on her. The soft yellow glow from the chandelier failed to provide its usual comfort, instead accentuating the chill that lingered in the air. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward midnight, and then the sound of the door echoed through the silence. Mark entered, bringing with him a whisper of alcohol and the cool breath of the night. He set his bag down on the floor, his eyes weary yet unshocked to find Anna still awake. Anna rose to her feet, her gaze tracing Mark's every action. He entered the kitchen, fiddling with his loose tie, as if striving to project an air of nonchalance. Yet she no longer recognized the man she had once placed her unwavering trust in. Instead, she saw a peculiar figure, cloaked in a facade of exhaustion and preoccupation. She opened her phone, gliding through the vivid photos captured that night. Each image spoke volumes, needing no words to convey their essence. She extended her phone, and Mark's expression shifted from serene to ashen as he gazed at the screen. The stillness in the kitchen deepened, with only the rhythmic ticking of the clock echoing the relentless march of time. Mark stood there, steadfast and silent. He gazed at the photos, then shifted his focus to Anna, who awaited him. Though she asked no questions, her eyes brimmed with curiosity, compelling him to confront the truths he was reluctant to acknowledge. He approached the table, resting his hands on the back of the chair, as if seeking something to anchor him. Without uttering a single word, the look on his face revealed an undeniable reality. His gaze averted, fixated on the table, yet he found no solace in its surface. His fingers gripped the edge of the chair, and an overwhelming heaviness enveloped his entire being, burdened by the weight of the truth. Anna retreated, leaving the kitchen behind, allowing the air between them to thicken with tension. Mark trailed behind, maintaining a respectful distance. She entered the living room, where the glow from the floor lamp painted a mosaic of shadows across the walls. She halted, her hands balled into fists, as if striving to hold back the tempest of feelings surging within her. Mark stood behind her, searching for a way to shatter the silence, yet each of his movements only deepened the weight of the moment. He sank into the chair, his head cradled in his hands, as if the burden of regret had wrapped itself around him. Anna remained turned away, but she sensed the despair emanating from the man she once believed to be unwavering and resolute. She understood he was yearning for absolution, yet she found it difficult to offer it freely. Memories of that night at the hotel danced through Anna's mind like a slow-motion film. The thumping music, Mark's effortless smile, and the way he gazed at the woman, all of it pierced her heart like sharp needles, making any justification he could offer feel utterly hollow. She approached the window and gazed into the vast darkness beyond. The distant lights danced and flickered, yet they offered no solace. Instead, a profound sense of emptiness and longing wrapped around her. Mark stood motionless, as if anticipating her words, but Anna chose not to turn. She understood that her next move would shape their destiny, and she was determined to take her time. She glided through the living room, swung open the balcony door, and welcomed the brisk wind, sweeping away the stifling atmosphere within the house. Mark rose and approached her, yet maintained a respectful distance, as if fearing that proximity could deepen the turmoil. He remained silent, but his gaze revealed a blend of remorse and despair. Anna averted her eyes, standing resolute, grappling with the turmoil within her, a battle between the love she once cherished and the haunting shadows of betrayal. As she pivoted, she glided past him without pausing, leaving him solitary in the living room. Deep down, she understood that this was not the moment for a decision, yet she could no longer turn a blind eye to the events that had unfolded. She required space to reflect, to confront her own emotions, before determining if this marriage was still a treasure worth preserving. Mark stood there, shoulders heavy with the weight of understanding, as if awakening to the truth that their bond would forever be altered. The house fell into an unusual stillness, broken only by the whisper of the wind outside the balcony, which brought with it an ineffable sense of longing. The kitchen glowed with a gentle yellow light emanating from the chandelier above. A stillness enveloped the space, but it was not a soothing quiet. It felt dense, suffocating, as if the room held its breath in anticipation of something unavoidable. Anna sat at the dining table, her hands intertwined. Before her, her phone rested face down, harboring images she feared to revisit, yet could never erase from her memory. The clock on the wall chimed 11. A sound echoed from the front door, the unmistakable noise of a key turning in the lock, followed by the creak of the door opening. Mark stepped inside, his steps unsteady, his suit disheveled, and his tie askew. Though his face bore the weight of exhaustion, he maintained a composed demeanor, as if all was well. He set his briefcase down on the floor and halted when he noticed Anna seated there. Their eyes locked, but rather than warmth, Anna's gaze was icy and probing. Mark strolled into the kitchen, removed his jacket, and draped it over a nearby chair. He poured himself a glass of water, moving deliberately, as if to stretch the moment, striving to maintain an air of nonchalance. Yet Anna remained still silent. She simply observed him, her gaze tracing his every action, as if anticipating an explanation that she understood would never truly satisfy. She grasped the phone, turned the screen down, and selected one of the photos she had captured. Without uttering a single word, She gently set the phone on the table, the screen directed towards Mark. He hesitated, his gaze darting to the screen, and the look on his face transformed in an instant. His eyes grew wide, a fleeting moment of disbelief, swiftly giving way to a sense of powerlessness. There was no escaping the truth of what lay before him. Mark pivoted, setting his glass of water down on the table with a gentle thud. He avoided Anna's gaze, standing there with his hands hanging loosely at his sides, as if every ounce of his strength had evaporated. Anna remained motionless, her face a mask of calm, yet her silence resonated with a depth that spoke louder than any words. She had witnessed everything. She understood. Mark approached the chair and settled down opposite Anna. He lowered his head, his hands intertwined, as if searching for a reason to explain himself. Yet, silence enveloped him. No words could possibly atone for his actions. Anna refrained from pressing him, her anger held at bay. Instead, she observed him, allowing the stillness to convey its own profound message. As time flowed on, the atmosphere in the room grew heavy and oppressive. Mark finally lifted his gaze, his eyes brimming with regret. Yet that expression did not bring Anna any solace. Instead, it deepened the chasm between them. Memories of that fateful night surged back into her thoughts. Mark, whom she had once deemed reliable, reveling at a raucous party, his grin, and his closeness to the woman in the red dress. Anna rose and stepped out of the kitchen, seeking the distance necessary to regain her composure. Mark followed her, a silent witness to her retreat, as if he yearned to offer explanations or mend the rift, yet he remained at a respectful distance. He trailed her into the living room, cautious, as if the slightest word or gesture might deepen the divide between them. Anna paused before the expansive window, the glow from the street lamps outside filtering through the delicate curtains. She gazed into the night, yet the darkness offered no clarity. A whirlwind of questions danced in her mind. What mistakes had she made? Why had Mark transformed so drastically? And was there still hope for their connection? Mark stood behind her, hesitant to approach. He sank onto the sofa, his head cradled in his hands, as if the burden of regret pressed heavily upon him. Yet, Anna found no solace in that remorse. It arrived too late, and its presence was too faint to matter. Time flowed silently between them, with neither uttering a word. The rhythmic ticking of the wall clock echoed in the stillness, a poignant reminder that life continued its course, even as their marriage teetered on the edge of disintegration. Finally, Anna pivoted, her gaze locking with Mark's, yet it held no warmth. She stepped onto the balcony, allowing the crisp night air to caress her face, washing away the sense of confinement. Mark remained seated, lost in thought, as if searching for a solution that eluded him. Anna understood that no action she took could alter the past. What she required now was the gift of time to reflect, to reconcile her own emotions. Yet, beneath the surface, she recognized that this marriage would never return to its former state. The dynamics between them had shifted irrevocably, and she questioned whether she possessed the fortitude to forgive. Mark sat there, shoulders drooped, resembling a man who had lost all that mattered in his existence. Yet, Anna felt no pity for him. The betrayal had forged a chasm she doubted they could ever cross. The house was more silent than ever, as if it too awaited a choice Anna wasn't prepared to confront. Anna awoke after a restless night filled with tossing and turning. The soft morning light seeped through the bedroom window, yet it failed to offer the comfort she sought. Mark lay asleep, his expression serene, but Anna understood that this was merely a mask. She gazed at him for a lingering moment, pondering whether he truly comprehended the depth of the hurt he had caused. At last she rose, slipped on a light sweater, and made her way downstairs. The kitchen embraced a serene stillness, as if time itself had paused. Anna settled at the table, her gaze drifting toward the little garden. The blossoms she had nurtured with such devotion now appeared hazy before her. Her thoughts swirled, yet clarity eluded her. Remembrances of Mark, of their joyful beginnings, intertwined with visions of him at a raucous celebration, beaming alongside another. Anna understood that she required a strategy, a means to restore harmony in her life. Yet, each time she contemplated forgiveness, the anguish engulfed her. She questioned whether their love possessed the strength to endure this trial, or if Mark's betrayal had shattered all that they had built. When Mark stepped into the kitchen, Anna averted her gaze. He lingered for a moment, as if contemplating the initiation of a conversation, yet her silence cast a shadow of uncertainty over him. He poured himself a cup of coffee, settled into the chair opposite her, and an unseen chasm emerged between them. Mark gazed at her, his eyes brimming with a sense of helplessness and remorse. Yet, Anna did not meet his eyes. Instead, she concentrated on her tea, her hands trembling ever so slightly as she lifted the cup to her lips. Each motion she made was cloaked in a veneer of tranquility, as if she were striving to hold herself together against the tide of her emotions. Anna weighed her choices in her mind. She could turn away, leave it all behind, and embark on a fresh journey. She recognized her strength to stand alone. Her art business was flourishing, and she had the power to rebuild. Yet, the breakup was not solely about her and Mark. It encompassed family, friends, and the shared vision they had crafted together throughout the years. Or she could decide to remain. But if she remained, could she truly overcome this anguish? Could she face Mark each day without recalling his treachery? And, even more crucially, could she find it within herself to trust him once more? Anna remained silent with Mark throughout the morning. As he departed, she realized it was time to convey her feelings in a different manner. She retrieved a piece of paper and began to write. In her letter, Anna refrained from accusations or blame. Instead, she poured out her emotions, the disappointment, the pain, the profound emptiness that enveloped her. She painted vivid pictures of her thoughts, expressing how it seemed as though everything between them was crumbling. She also expressed the deep affection she held for him, reflecting on the beautiful memories they had created together. Yet, she concluded the letter with a heartfelt truth. She needed time. Time to reflect, to rediscover herself, and to determine if forgiveness was possible. The letter was not a farewell, but it was not a vow either. Anna placed the letter on the table, knowing that Mark would undoubtedly notice it upon his return home. With determination, she collected a few cherished belongings and tucked them into a small bag. Though the destination was uncertain, she felt an undeniable urge to leave this house, seeking clarity in the journey ahead. Anna navigated the winding roads toward the suburbs, where a dear friend's cozy home awaited her as a refuge. With each mile, a sense of relief washed over her. For the first time in weeks, she embraced the feeling of taking a step for herself, rather than clinging to a relationship that left her uncertain and weary. When she arrived, Anna stepped out of the car and inhaled the crisp suburban air. A unique sense of tranquility washed over her, not because all her challenges had vanished, but because she recognized that she had embarked on the journey to reclaim her life. In the cozy little house, Anna dedicated the following days to reflecting and navigating her emotions. She chose not to reply to Mark's messages or calls. Yet each night, she found herself by the window, pondering whether he genuinely felt regret and had the capacity to transform. Deep down, she understood that, no matter what her ultimate choice would be, she required time to mend and rediscover her own power. While Anna was away, Mark found himself alone in the quiet house. Anna's letter served as a mirror, revealing all his missteps. In the days that followed, he sank into deep reflection, unable to shake the reality that he had shattered the trust of the woman he cherished above all else. For the first time in years, Mark felt a sense of chaos within himself. He embarked on a journey of transformation, not to preserve his reputation, but to demonstrate to himself that change was within his reach. Mark made the courageous decision to cancel superfluous social gatherings, distanced himself from colleagues who had tempted him into extravagant parties, and sought guidance to gain insight into why he had allowed himself to embrace such a lifestyle. Mark's actions went unnoticed by Anna, yet his intent was never to seek recognition. He understood that true transformation begins at the core, and it was through this profound change that he could aspire to a second chance. In the quaint cottage nestled within the woods, Anna embarked on a journey toward tranquility. She devoted her days to painting, allowing her feelings to pour forth with every stroke of the brush. The artwork transformed, no longer soft and serene, but vibrant with turmoil, mirroring the tempest within her spirit. Deep down, she recognized her enduring love for Mark, yet that affection was now shrouded in the shadows of heartache and disillusionment. One day, a package arrived for her from Mark. Within it lay a notebook filled with his heartfelt reflections and the steps he had taken to transform himself. He did not seek forgiveness, yet he conveyed his awareness of the pain he had inflicted and vowed to never make the same error again. Anna found herself uncertain about whether she could place her trust in him once more, but she felt the genuine essence of his words resonate within her. After a few weeks, Anna made the courageous choice to return home. Not to rush back immediately, but to confront Mark once more, this time from a place of strength. She understood that the journey wouldn't be simple, yet she recognized the importance of making a definitive choice, to embrace forgiveness and rebuild their bond, or to release the past and embark on a new chapter of her life. Mark stood at the door, his eyes brimming with a mix of anticipation and concern. Anna remained silent as she stepped into the house, enveloped by the memories of the space she had once called her own. Though the path ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty, she had discovered the courage to seize her own destiny. Anna made her way back to what she once believed was her ideal sanctuary. Each step along the well-trodden path to the house stirred a wave of nostalgia within her. The white iron gate and the rose bushes she had lovingly nurtured now whispered echoes of a bygone era, a time that was both exquisite and heart-wrenching. Mark stood at the door, his shoulders taut, bracing himself for the words she was about to share. His eyes, a mixture of concern and a flicker of hope, spoke volumes. Anna observed him from a distance, her heart a whirlwind of emotions. In that instant, she understood that the love they once shared had not entirely faded, yet the scars he had left behind ran profoundly deep. Anna stepped into the house, and everything appeared unchanged. The furniture stood in perfect order, their wedding photos still graced the walls. Yet, her perception of the space had transformed. It was no longer a sanctuary of safety, but rather a fractured canvas, yearning for restoration or release. They sat facing one another in the living room, enveloped in a moment of stillness. No words were exchanged immediately. Rather, the air was thick with a silence that carried a weight of understanding, lighter than before yet more profound. Anna sensed the sincerity reflected in Mark's gaze, yet it did little to ease the ache within her. She absorbed his words as he shared the steps he had taken to transform his life, the commitment to abandon his former ways, the therapy sessions he had embraced to gain deeper insight into himself. Mark refrained from justifying his actions. Instead, he expressed nothing but regret, a late awakening to the truth that he had lost something precious in his life. Anna, however, chose not to respond right away. She understood that forgiveness cannot be constructed from mere words or fleeting gestures. Trust requires time to mend, if it can be mended at all. Anna rose and stepped into the garden, where the fragrance of the roses danced in the air, yet it failed to lift her spirits. Mark trailed behind, maintaining his distance. She glanced back at him, and in that moment, for the first time in weeks, a sense of lightness began to wash over her. She understood that a final decision didn't need to be made in this moment. It wasn't a simple choice, stay or leave. She could allow both options some time to discover if a solution could emerge. Yet, she reminded herself that if she sensed she couldn't endure, she was prepared to walk away without a glance back. Anna confided in Mark that she required time, and he nodded in understanding, offering no objections. They refrained from embracing, avoiding any pretense that all was well. Yet, in the stillness that enveloped them, a delicate spark of hope flickered. Hope that time could mend their hearts or guide them toward a fresh journey. In the days that unfolded, Anna and Mark gradually embarked on a journey of renewal. They chose not to mask the reality of their situation, recognizing that their bond required mending. Anna poured her heart into her art, allowing her feelings to manifest in her drawings. Mark dedicated himself to honoring his commitment, steering clear of the distractions that had once derailed him. Anna found herself at a crossroads, uncertain if complete forgiveness was within her reach. Yet, she recognized the power she had reclaimed over her own life. Should the relationship prove unviable, she would depart with grace and resilience. If there was a chance for renewal, it would be a shared journey, one that would require effort and commitment from both of them. The tale concludes with Anna at her easel, a fresh canvas coming to life. The initial strokes are wild, yet they slowly unite, creating a vision filled with promise. Beyond the window, Mark nurtures the rose bushes, a gentle effort to begin anew. Their future remains a mystery, but Anna feels a deep resolve to embrace it, no matter the path it unfolds. Next story. Our family on the surface was a typical traditional family. My father, a strict but loving man, always emphasized morality and marital loyalty. My mother, a hard-working and loving woman, was the spiritual pillar of the family. We had 3 siblings, me, my older sister, and my younger brother, who was causing the whole family to fall into a spiral of conflict. My younger brother, 3 years younger than me, had a happy family. He married a gentle, capable woman and had 2 beautiful daughters. Every time we went to his parents' house, we often saw his small family gathered together, the children chattering about school, and his wife taking care of everyone with dedication. I used to think that my younger brother had achieved what many people dream of, a perfect family. But life never goes as we expect. What seems solid can easily be broken by just one wrong moment. It all started 3 years ago. One evening, I received a call from my sister-in-law, her voice trembling, almost choking. She said she had caught her husband, my younger brother, cheating on her. The woman was none other than a young colleague that my younger brother often mentioned in family conversations. I didn't know how to react. I felt like I was hearing a far-fetched story. My brother, whom I had believed would always be loyal to his family, could betray his wife and children. But when I went to his house to find out what had happened, what I saw only made me more disappointed. My brother did not deny it. He admitted that he had been secretly seeing the woman for more than 6 months. Although they did not live together, he often used work as an excuse to spend the night elsewhere, where he and the woman could be together freely. When he was caught, my brother just bowed his head and did not say a word of excuse. The marriage quickly fell apart. His wife, after many sleepless nights, decided to divorce him and took the 2 girls back to her mother's house. The court awarded her custody, and my brother, once considered a model father, now only saw his children on weekends. The consequences of the incident did not stop there. My family, which had always prided itself on its unity and moral values, was now in chaos. My mother cried a lot, blaming my brother for hurting his wife and children and embarrassing the family. My father, although he did not say much, I knew he was very disappointed. He had believed that my brother would become the successor to the values he had always held dear, but now that belief was shaken. As for me, I was not only disappointed, but also angry. I could not understand why my brother would choose to destroy his family for a frivolous relationship. I tried to advise him, but he did not seem to feel the seriousness of the problem. He only said that he was unhappy in his marriage, that the relationship with that woman made him feel like he could be himself. After the divorce, my brother fell into a period of crisis. Without his wife and children by his side, he became lost and disoriented. His work was severely affected when news of the affair spread within the company. Many colleagues showed a distant attitude, forcing him to change jobs. However, my brother still maintained a relationship with that woman. I didn't know much about her, only that she had a child from a previous relationship. My mother, every time she mentioned her, sighed and shook her head. She said that a woman who accepted being a homewrecker would never be suitable to be part of the family. Meanwhile, my brother's ex-wife, a woman I have always respected, did everything she could to protect her children from harm. She moved back to her mother's house, went to work to raise the children, and tried to give them a stable life. Every time I visited her, she always appeared calm, but her eyes could not hide her fatigue. I knew that, even though they were divorced, she was still in pain because of what my brother had done. My two nieces, even though they were young, also sensed the change in the family. They became quieter, often avoiding mentioning their father. Once, when I asked them if they wanted to see him, the older one just shook her head, and the younger one said, "Daddy's busy." That innocent answer broke my heart. I wondered if my brother realized what was most important to him. One evening in early June, as the family sat down to dinner, the younger brother suddenly announced a shocking news. With a serious but determined expression, he said that he planned to remarry. What surprised the family even more was that the person he wanted to marry was the girl who had caused his previous marriage to fall apart. The reactions in the dining room were divided. My mother, who had already disliked the girl, immediately expressed her strong opposition. She said that marrying her would bring shame to the family, not to mention hurting her two grandchildren. I couldn't keep my cool either, put down my chopsticks, and asked why he wanted to marry someone who had ruined his own marriage. On the contrary, my father, who usually had little say in family matters, was calm. He said that everyone had the right to start over, that if my brother had made his choice, the family should respect his decision. My older sister, who had always stood by my father, agreed. She said that the girl's past was not something to judge. The important thing was that they truly loved each other. I felt betrayed. How could a father, who had always held family values in high regard, accept this? I was disappointed not only with my brother, but also with my father. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the family became more tense than ever. My mother almost refused to talk to my brother. Every time he came to visit, she would only say hello briefly, and then avoid going to her own room. I also avoided seeing him because every conversation led to arguments. He always said that I did not understand the feelings between him and that girl, that everyone was being too harsh on them. I cannot accept that reason. To me, your marrying a mistress is not only an insult to your ex-wife and children, but also a degradation of the entire family. I do not want my two nieces to grow up thinking that wrongdoings can be easily forgiven and accepted. My father, despite my mother and I's objections, began to prepare for the engagement. He said that each person's life was their own, and that parents should not interfere too deeply. He emphasized that the most important thing was that his brother was happy, and if he truly loved the girl, then the family should not stand in his way. My sister also spoke up to defend her brother. She said that the other girl might have made mistakes in the past, but everyone has a chance to make amends. She also said that opposing the situation would only make things more tense and could destroy the feelings between family members. I felt isolated. Every time we argued, I felt like I was the only one holding my ground, while my dad and sister kept telling me to be more tolerant. I didn't know if I was trying to stand up for what was right or just clinging to outdated values. One day, my brother suggested that I meet that girl to talk. At first, I refused, but after much persuasion from my brother, I agreed on the condition that the meeting would be just between me and her, without my brother present. We met at a small cafe. The girl sat there, looking calm, but with a hint of worry in her eyes. She started by apologizing, saying that she understood why I objected, and that what she had done in the past was wrong. But then she added that she and my brother truly loved each other, and that she only wished to build a family with him. I don't know if those words came from sincerity, or were just a way for her to justify her actions. But what surprised me the most was when she said that she was willing to do everything to prove that she was worthy of her family's acceptance. She said that the past cannot be changed, but the future can be built from better things. What worries me most is not my feelings, but the future of my two nieces. How will they feel when they learn that their father married the woman who caused the family to break up? Will they accept that woman as their stepmother, or will they carry resentment for the rest of their lives? One time, I asked my eldest niece if she wanted to attend her father's wedding. She hesitated and then said, "If my father is happy, I am happy too. But I don't want my mother to be sad." That answer made me choke up. I realized that, although she was young, she was old enough to understand the pain in her mother's heart. That girl, who was once called the third person, was none other than my younger brother's former colleague. People often looked at her with judgmental eyes, but few knew that she had lived a life filled with pain and unhappiness. Born into an unhappy family, she grew up with scars from her parents' breakup. Childhood memories of abandonment, reproaches, and lack of affection had shaped a girl who always longed to be loved. She had married at a young age, but the marriage did not last long. Her previous husband was a heartless man, only interested in work and outside relationships. After many years of suffering, she decided to divorce, taking her young child with her and shouldering the thorny path of life alone. Her life after divorce was not easy. As a single mother, she worked, took care of her child, and tried to face the prejudices from society. The tiring days in the office, the long nights staying up late to finish work, and the silent breakdowns made her a strong but lonely woman. My brother came into her life when she felt most lost. At first, they were just colleagues working on stressful projects together. But it was his kindness and understanding that comforted her. For the first time in years, she felt genuine concern and empathy from a man. Their relationship started with small stories, words of encouragement at work, and gradually developed into something deeper. She knew that my brother already had a family, but her feelings were uncontrollable. For her, my brother was not just a colleague, but the first person who made her feel truly loved. When the affair was discovered, she knew she was wrong. In the days that followed, she lived in torment and regret. She not only hurt my brother's wife and children, but also made herself the target of criticism. She thought many times about giving up everything, moving to a faraway place to start over. But her feelings for my brother were too great, and she couldn't do it. She also understood that, in my family's eyes, she was a destroyer. She knew that she did not deserve forgiveness, but she did not want to give up hope. She believed that if given the chance, she could prove that she had changed, that she could become a good wife and a responsible stepmother. After her affair with my brother was exposed, she became the target of gossip. Her colleagues shunned her friends criticized her, and even her family felt ashamed. She lived in a spiral of isolation and despair. But instead of giving up, she chose to face it. She continued to work, take care of her children, and tried not to let the cruel words break her. She knew that her life would never be easy, especially when she decided to remarry my brother. But she didn't want to live in fear and torment forever. She wanted to face her mistakes, to make amends and start over. Her love for my brother was not perfect, but it was sincere. She not only loved him as a man, but also cherished him as a companion. She believed that if they both tried, they could overcome all prejudices and difficulties. She also knew that in order to be accepted by my family, she had to do more than that. She had to prove that she was not just a mistress, but someone who could bring happiness to my brother. She started planning for the future, thinking about how to take care of my two nieces, thinking about building a harmonious family. She knew that this would be a long and difficult journey, but she was willing to trade everything for the opportunity. She didn't try to justify her past, but she wanted my family to know that she wasn't a bad person. She was just a woman who made a mistake, but didn't want that mistake to define her life. She wanted to be heard, to be given a chance, and to be shown that people can change. Ever since his younger brother announced his intention to marry the girl who had caused the breakdown of his family, the atmosphere in the house became heavier than ever. Family gatherings, which were supposed to be occasions for family reunion, were now nothing more than heated debates where everyone stuck to their own point of view. My mother, who always valued family values and honor, was still firmly opposed. She could not accept that the woman who had broken up her son's marriage was now an official part of the family. Whenever she had the chance, she would mention the consequences that the girl had caused, especially to her two grandchildren. I agree with my mother, not because I hate the girl personally, but because I worry about the future of the family. I wonder if this decision will really bring happiness to my brother, or will it just make things more complicated? On the contrary, my father and my older sister supported this marriage. They believed that everyone had the right to start over, that the past should not be a burden that would hinder people from finding happiness. My father believed that if my younger brother truly loved the girl, the family should support him instead of hindering him. One evening, the whole family held a meeting to discuss the marriage of the younger brother. It was an evening when the tension reached its peak. My mother began by emphasizing that marrying the girl would hurt her two grandchildren. She worried that, in their eyes, this woman would forever be the one who had ruined their family. She also believed that holding a grand wedding would be tantamount to completely denying what had happened before. My father replied that the past could not be changed, but the future could. He said that if my brother truly wanted to rebuild his life with this girl, the family should respect his decision. He stressed that opposition would only push my brother away and make him feel lonely. I spoke up, trying to stay calm, but unable to hide my displeasure. I said that accepting that girl was not only my brother's business, but also affected the honor and relationship of the whole family. I was worried that this decision would make his mother and I the target of criticism from relatives and friends. The elder sister, who was always calm, said that everyone had the right to make mistakes, and what was more important was how they corrected those mistakes. She believed that continuing to protest would not only not solve the problem, but would also create more distance between family members. After the meeting, my brother came to me to talk privately. He explained that his relationship with the girl was not just a passing emotion, but a deep and mature love. He admitted his past mistakes and said that he was not looking for my approval, but only hoped that I would understand and respect his decision. I listened, but I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. I said that love can't be an excuse to justify everything. I asked him if he had thought about his two daughters' feelings, whether they would accept that woman as their stepmother. My brother was silent, his eyes filled with conflict. My mother also had a conversation with the girl. Although she did not accept it, she wanted to hear what she had to say. During the conversation, the girl admitted that she was wrong, but she also expressed her desire to do it again. She said that she would try to be a good stepmother and would do everything she could to clear up the misunderstandings in the family. While the family was still struggling to find answers, outside gossip began to reach us. Friends and relatives kept asking about my brother's remarriage with unflattering insinuations. My mother, who always valued family honor, felt more pressure than ever. Some of the younger brother's close friends also spoke out against the relationship. They said that no matter how much the girl changed, the stain from the past would still be a barrier that would prevent the relationship from lasting. They were worried that if the younger brother continued with this decision, he would face more hardship than happiness. In the days after the family meeting, everyone seemed to have entered a period of silence. There were no more heated arguments, but the atmosphere in the house was still heavy. My younger brother rarely visited my parents. My mother became more and more withdrawn, and my father still maintained his stance, but his silence carried a thoughtfulness that I had never seen before. I could feel the tension in every short conversation between the members. Every sentence carried a hidden meaning, an unsolved concern. My family was like a house with cracks in it, and with just a small push, everything could collapse. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, a rare occurrence these days, his younger brother suddenly announced that he was going to get married, whether his family supported it or not. He said he had thought about it for a long time, and that it was not a decision he had made on a whim. He wanted to live his own life, even if it meant being misunderstood or criticized. My father nodded in agreement, but my mother and I couldn't hide our disappointment. I felt like his words were a knife cutting into the small hope that he would change his mind. My mother said nothing, just stood up and left the table, leaving a heavy silence. My mother confronted my father in a private conversation. She expressed her concern that this decision would not only hurt the family, but also affect the honor of the entire clan. She stressed that her two grandchildren would not be able to accept that woman as their stepmother, and this would leave a wound that would be difficult to heal. My father, although understanding my mother's feelings, still maintained his stance that his son needed to live his life the way he wanted. He said that even if this decision was wrong, it was still a lesson that his brother had to face and bear on his own. He also believed that if the family continued to object, his brother would become more distant and could cause the family relationship to break down completely. I, who had been vehemently opposed, began to feel tired of the constant tension. The arguments led nowhere, only leaving me feeling helpless. I realized that I had no control over my brother's life, and that my opposition did not help the family, but only complicated things. One day, as I watched my two nieces playing together, I suddenly thought that, even though I did not agree with my brother's decision, I did not want them to grow up in a divided family. I began to wonder whether trying to maintain moral values was worth more than family harmony and happiness. My mother, though she did not say it, began to feel the pressure of the family split. She knew that if she continued to object, she might lose her relationship with her son. After many sleepless nights, she decided that she would no longer object, but would not actively participate in the wedding preparations. She said that if her brother had chosen this path, she only hoped that he would not hurt anyone else. The wedding day took place in an atmosphere that was both cozy and quiet. My father was the one who organized it, with the support of my older sister. My mother was present, but did not really participate. She sat quietly in a corner, her eyes filled with sadness that she could not hide. I, despite my doubts, decided to attend to show some small support for my brother. I still had unresolved conflicts in my heart, but I realized that I did not want to further damage our family relationship. My two nieces were also present, but they did not say much. Their eyes were wary when they saw their new stepmother. Relatives and friends had mixed opinions. Some expressed their blessings, but many whispered malicious words. These gossips not only made my mother more heartbroken, but also created an invisible pressure on the family. However, the younger brother and his new bride did not seem to mind. They appeared happy, trying everything to maintain their decision. Although the road ahead was full of challenges, they believed that as long as they persevered, everything would gradually stabilize. After their wedding, the younger brother and his new wife moved into a small apartment in the suburbs. They began building a new family life with many expectations and many challenges. Although they both tried to be optimistic, they could not avoid the pressures from family, society, and their own past hurts. My two nieces, though invited to visit their new home, kept their distance from their stepmother. They both seemed shy and quiet around her, and often avoided her. I realized that, despite her brother and his new wife's efforts to get along, her relationship with her stepchildren would be a difficult one. The early stages of their marriage were not as smooth as they had hoped. The new bride, despite her best efforts to be a good wife and a responsible stepmother, could not help but feel out of place. She realized that her husband's family's acceptance was only grudging, and she had to prove her worth in every little action. One time, when my mother came to visit, she looked around the apartment and made only cold comments. Although she didn't say anything, her eyes said it all. She still hadn't accepted this girl as her daughter-in-law. The feeling of being judged made her even more stressed. My brother, in the midst of the conflicts, began to feel exhausted. He did not know how to please everyone, and this gradually affected his mood and behavior. He became irritable, and small arguments between his wife and him began to appear. The girl, though hurt, did not give up. She started with small actions to build a relationship with her husband's family. She often called my mother to ask about her, sent gifts to her nieces, and tried to participate in family meetings. Although these efforts were not well received, They helped her feel that she had not given up in vain. The girls, though initially reserved, gradually began to open up. She took time to take them out, listened to their stories, and tried not to force them to call her mom. Instead of pushing, she chose to wait patiently. One time, while taking her grandchildren on a picnic, her eldest granddaughter suddenly smiled and asked her about her childhood memories. That moment, though small, was a big step forward in her relationship with the two children. The little changes from the girl also gradually affected my family. My mother, although she did not say it, began to notice her efforts. One time, when she received the gift she sent, my mother smiled slightly. Although it was just a fleeting expression, it showed that she was gradually accepting reality. My father, who had always supported the couple, encouraged everyone in the family to give the girl more time. He organized regular family gatherings to create opportunities for family members to get closer. Those meals together were no longer as heavy as before, although there were still moments of silence. I, who had been strongly against it, also began to see things differently. I realized that although the girl's past was not perfect, her efforts to correct her mistakes were sincere. I no longer held resentment in my heart as before, but gradually changed to a more tolerant attitude. Life has not always been easy, but it is the challenges that have helped my family realize the value of forgiveness. Past conflicts have gradually receded, giving way to efforts to build a more harmonious future. His younger brother and his new wife constantly tried to prove that their love was worthy of respect. He spent more time with his two daughters, taking them to school, attending parent-teacher conferences, and always trying to maintain his role as a father. The new wife, after much effort, was gradually accepted by the family. She became not only a close stepmother, but also a part of the family, although not yet fully considered an official member. Next story. My family has always been a source of admiration for those around us. We reside in a spacious, inviting home nestled in a tranquil suburb, where large windows invite the gentle morning sunlight to fill our days. My husband, a thriving professional in the financial sector, is often immersed in lengthy meetings. As a devoted housewife, I chose to set aside my career to nurture our family. We are blessed with a single son, at a tender age where every action of his parents leaves a lasting impression on his heart. Our lives were consistently enveloped in an illusion of perfection. Each weekend, the family would convene around the breakfast table, a beautiful oak piece that my husband had chosen during a memorable vacation in Europe. Our conversations, though fleeting, always centered on our son's education or my husband's latest endeavors. Even in moments of emptiness, I reassured myself that I possessed everything: a loving family, a secure life, and a bright future for my son. Yet, in the stillness of my thoughts, a sense of emptiness began to settle. My husband frequently returned home late, and with him came the weight of his day's labor. The inquiries I made about his experiences were often met with vague responses. My son, the little boy who once sought comfort in my embrace during his moments of sorrow, now seemed to retreat further into himself. He would spend hours at his desk, not engaged in his studies, but rather lost in the endless scroll of his phone, drifting through his own universe. I understand that my son is feeling the weight of studying for his exams. My husband frequently reminds me that a little pressure is essential for success. However, my greater concern lies with my son's mental well-being. He has always possessed great potential, yet he struggles with focus. In the evenings, as I enter his room, I often see him gazing at open books, yet not putting pen to paper. My husband, with his pragmatic nature, proposed that we enlist the help of a tutor. He expressed that the weight of exams was overwhelming and that this support would enable our son to concentrate better. Initially, I resisted the idea. I yearned to guide my son through this challenge on my own, but my husband persuaded me that a professional touch would be more beneficial. After a week of diligent searching, we found Anna, a bright young woman who had recently graduated from university with an impressive background. My husband took the initiative to reach out to Anna himself to arrange a meeting, showing genuine interest in her insights during their conversation. Anna first arrived at the house on a Tuesday afternoon. I recall it vividly, for the sun shone so brightly that I had to draw the curtains to soften the light in the living room. When Anna stepped inside, I was instantly captivated. She stood tall and slender, radiating a warm smile and exuding confidence. Her hair flowed freely and naturally, and her attire was simple, yet carried an undeniable elegance. My son, who once seemed lethargic and unmotivated, began to embrace his studies with newfound determination. Anna's adaptable teaching approach, blending wisdom with warmth, made all the difference. She not only guided him through challenging problems, but also uplifted him with simple yet powerful words of support. I observed a remarkable change. My son began to eagerly anticipate his lessons, surpassing his own expectations. My husband began to exhibit an unexpected level of concern. While he had once been indifferent to my son's academic journey, he now often inquired about Anna's timetable. There were moments when he would return home earlier than usual, expressing a desire to witness my son's progress. A feeling stirred within me that something was amiss, yet I comforted myself with the thought that he was simply striving to be a devoted father. Despite the wonderful transformations Anna introduced into my son's life, I couldn't shake the peculiar sensation that lingered in our home. I observed my husband's gaze resting on her a moment too long, his unexpected inquiries about her, and the eagerness with which he offered to assist her with minor tasks in the study. Anna appeared oblivious to it all, or perhaps, if she was aware, she chose not to reveal it. But what troubled me the most was my son. He began dedicating more time to preparing for school, styling his hair, even applying some perfume, something he had never done before. He frequently spoke of Anna during meals, not as a tutor, but as someone significant in his life. One afternoon, as Anna completed her school day and prepared to depart, I heard my son's voice from his room, requesting that I call her back because he had a question that puzzled him. Before I could respond, my husband rose, hurried outside, and engaged her directly. I glanced out the window and saw them standing in the warm afternoon sun, conversing, and in that instant, I understood that something was amiss. I reassured myself that perhaps I was overanalyzing, that it was merely a coincidence. Yet, beneath the surface, I recognized that a flicker of uncertainty had started to ignite. In the initial days following Anna's arrival, a sense of harmony enveloped our home. My son gradually rekindled his passion for learning, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I witnessed him dedicating more time to his studies rather than his phone. However, it wasn't long before I began to observe subtle transformations that demanded my attention. My son, once indifferent to his education, now invested more effort in preparing for his classes. Books that had long languished in neglect on the shelves were now meticulously organized on his desk. Yet, what truly captivated my interest was the newfound time he devoted to his reflection. Each afternoon, prior to Anna's arrival, he would style his hair, assess his attire, and even spritz on a hint of cologne that had previously escaped my notice. He grew increasingly attentive to every small detail. I witnessed him diligently scrub the ink stains from his hands, a concern he had never shown before. On one occasion, when I entered his room unexpectedly, he was taken aback and swiftly concealed a piece of paper behind him. Once he departed, I quietly opened the desk drawer and discovered a hastily written line. "Does she like me?" My husband was not typically very engaged in household tasks, but ever since Anna entered our lives, he began to take a greater interest in our son's study routine. He inquired about the timing, the subjects that Anna was covering, and occasionally nudged me to make tea for her. These small gestures didn't trouble me until I noticed that he seemed to be around the house more frequently whenever Anna visited. My husband once returned home late, using work or lengthy meetings as his reasons. Yet now he arrives on time, or even earlier. He occupies his study, often leaving the door slightly open, just enough to catch the sounds drifting from the living room where Anna and our son are immersed in their studies. When Anna wraps up her studying, I observe him swiftly exiting the room, as if eager to catch a glimpse of her. That day, after Anna completed her lesson, she got ready to depart, as she always did. My son rushed after her to the door, and I heard him calling her name from his room. Before I could step in, my husband swiftly descended the stairs, took Anna's bag, and offered to accompany her to the car. I observed them from the kitchen window, noticing how they stood by the car for an extended moment before she drove away. Their actions were nothing out of the ordinary, yet there was a closeness in their body language that I found difficult to define. As I tidied up the living room, a small button caught my eye beneath the sofa. It wasn't mine, nor my son's, nor my husband's. The button was a delicate shade of light blue, reminiscent of a blouse I recalled Anna wearing. I chose not to inquire about it, yet an unexpected wave of unease washed over me. Another day, as I tended to my husband's laundry, I observed a peculiar crease in the collar of his shirt, as if it had been gripped or tugged. A fragrance drifted from the fabric, sweet and delicate, and I paused. It wasn't my perfume, nor the scent my husband typically wore. A feeling of unease began to blossom within me, though I refrained from jumping to any conclusions. As I settled into the living room, observing Anna guide her son, I caught a glimpse of the expression in his eyes. It transcended the typical gaze of a student directed at a teacher. It was a gaze brimming with admiration and yearning. He endeavored to extend the lessons with curious side questions, and I could see that it was becoming increasingly difficult for him to conceal his emotions. But what troubled me the most were my husband's eyes. In the fleeting moments I caught him stealing glances at Anna from his study, His eyes were no longer merely filled with concern. They were the very same eyes I had encountered years ago when he first laid eyes on me. One evening, after Anna departed, I sensed an extraordinary stillness enveloping the house. My son had shut the door to his room and remained inside. My husband was seated in his study, fixated on his computer screen. I approached him, and for a fleeting moment, an email window flashed on the screen, its subject line just out of reach. Before I could utter a word, he closed the screen, turned to me, and inquired what I required. I chose silence. Instead, I retreated to my room and lay awake through the night. The fragments of the puzzle in my mind started to align, creating a vision I was reluctant to confront fully. Yet deep down, I understood that these signs were not mere coincidences. Doubts lingered around me like an unshakable specter. The subtle shifts in my husband's demeanor, the mysterious glances in my son's eyes, and Anna's peculiar role within our family left me feeling overwhelmed. I yearned to dismiss the notion that something was amiss, yet a part of me understood that the truth has a way of revealing itself in time. My husband possesses a car that serves as his companion in the world of work. Once he took great pride in keeping it immaculate, but recently I've observed a shift. It's not receiving the care it once did. One evening, when he returned home later than usual, I heard the car door slam with an intensity that caught my attention. Curiosity drew me to the window, where I noticed he hadn't even brought his work bag inside, a departure from his usual routine. The car sat there in the shadows, as if it were concealing a mystery. The following morning, as he departed from home early, using a ride-hailing app under the pretense of urgent work, I found myself gazing at his car. The keys remained on the kitchen table, an uncommon sight. The curiosity intensified. I had to uncover the truth. I stepped into the yard, seized the keys, and unlocked the car. The air inside the car carried an unusual scent, sweet and delicate, yet it was neither my perfume nor my husband's. I searched through the glove compartment, uncovering nothing of significance. However, as I leaned over the passenger seat, my gaze caught a glimpse of a small corner beneath the foot of the seat. Something shimmered in the light, an empty condom wrapper. I stood in awe, struggling to comprehend the sight before me. My heart froze, and a chill coursed through my spine. I reached for the shell, scrutinizing it closely to confirm my perception. It was hollow, crumpled, as though it had been cast aside after its purpose was served. It rested there, a quiet symbol of treachery. A whirlwind of questions swirled in my thoughts. Why was this condom wrapper in my husband's car? What actions had he taken? With whom? And why was he attempting to conceal it? I scoured the car for additional clues, yet discovered nothing more. There remained only that condom wrapper, a solitary fragment of a puzzle I was reluctant to piece together. I stepped into the house, my heart weighed down by uncertainty. The condom wrapper nestled in my pocket, a silent testament to a truth I was unprepared to face. I hesitated to confront my husband, unsure if I was ready to embrace the reality that awaited me. Yet, from that moment forward, I understood that everything had shifted. That evening, my husband returned home with a serene demeanor, as if the world around us had remained untouched. I observed him with heightened attention, There was nothing out of the ordinary in his appearance, yet the deceptive tranquility in his voice deepened my sense of unease. As he stood in the shower, I took a moment to explore his jacket pocket and discovered a receipt from a nearby coffee shop, the very same address I had noticed on a note in his car just a few days prior. The receipt bore a date, the previous afternoon, right after Anna's class. My hands trembled as the pieces began to align. Had he encountered someone? Or was it merely a twist of fate? As I sought to comprehend my husband's behavior, I couldn't overlook the transformation in Anna and her son. Anna, who consistently maintained her politeness and professionalism, started to exhibit signs of discomfort whenever our paths crossed. I observed her increasingly avoiding my gaze, and she appeared to hasten away after each class. There was a cautiousness in her demeanor, as if she were attuned to my unspoken doubts. My son, in contrast, grew more sensitive with each passing day. He would often retreat to his room for hours after Anna departed, his enthusiasm dimmed. One day, as I entered the room unannounced, I caught a glimpse of him scribbling on a piece of paper. When I inquired about it, he swiftly folded the paper and tucked it away in the drawer, his gaze averted as if he were guarding a secret. I found myself ensnared between two blazing infernos. On one side stood my husband, a man I had cherished for years, yet he now felt like a stranger. On the other side was my son, navigating a whirlwind of complex emotions that eluded my grasp. And caught in the middle was Anna, a vibrant, captivating woman, yet also the catalyst for the turmoil engulfing my family. I understood that silence could not be my companion for eternity. The condom wrapper nestled in my pocket felt like a flickering flame, consuming every thought that danced through my mind. Yet, I craved more time, more proof, before I confronted the truth that both beckoned me and filled me with trepidation. The empty condom wrapper I discovered in the car transformed into more than a mere object. It emerged as the epicenter of my doubts, igniting an inner turmoil that demanded my attention. From that instant, I realized that everything within my family had shifted, and the only question that lingered was, to what extent? After discovering the condom wrapper, my perception of my husband shifted irrevocably. I scrutinized his every action, his destinations, the people he conversed with, the hour he returned home, all transformed into fragments of a larger puzzle in my thoughts. One Saturday afternoon, when he mentioned he needed to step out to meet a partner, an unsettling feeling washed over me. He was impeccably dressed, sporting a freshly pressed shirt and the unmistakable scent of the perfume he reserved for special occasions. I made the choice to follow him. He pulled away from the house and onto the road that wound toward the heart of the city. I climbed into my car and traveled a brief stretch. He ultimately halted in front of a quaint hotel, just a stone's throw from the coffee shop where I had spotted the receipt tucked in his pocket. I parked a few hundred meters away, my heart racing as I observed him step into the lobby, never glancing back. About 10 minutes later, I spotted a familiar silhouette stepping into the hotel. It was Anna. She donned a light blue dress, her hair flowing freely and naturally. She appeared entirely transformed from the way she typically presented herself at my home, as if she had meticulously prepared for this encounter. I sat in the car, my hands clutching the steering wheel with a fierce intensity that sent waves of discomfort through me. A part of my spirit urged me to step inside and confront them both without hesitation. Yet, another part hesitated, gripped by the fear that I might lack the courage to confront the reality before me. I lingered for another 15 minutes, striving to find my center, but the ache in my heart only intensified. That evening, I arrived home, feeling a swirl of emotions. My husband was delayed, and my son remained in his room. As I entered his space to deliver fresh clothes, I found him sitting silently on his bed, fixated on his phone. The moment I set the items down, he swiftly shielded the screen, his eyes brimming with a sense of shame. I remained silent, yet he found the courage to speak. He expressed his concern that Anna had been distant lately, and he couldn't grasp why her enthusiasm had waned. His voice trembled slightly, tinged with disappointment. I listened intently, coming to understand that he was enduring a heartache I never imagined my child would face, the ache of unreturned affection. His words, intertwined with the sights I had witnessed that afternoon, revealed an undeniable truth. Anna was more than merely a governess. She had emerged as the heart of intricate emotions within my family, affecting my son, my husband, and even myself, grappling with feelings of jealousy and loss. The following day, I found myself observing my husband and Anna's exchanges at home with greater scrutiny. Whenever she arrived to teach, he would frequently stroll into the living room to bump into her, posing casual questions about work or life. She consistently responded succinctly, attempting to maintain her distance, yet I could see a flicker of confusion in her eyes. My son, in contrast, consistently sought to draw near to her. He would extend study sessions with superfluous inquiries or request her to revisit assignments he had already finished. One day, I discovered him leaving a small card on his desk, adorned with a hastily written note that said, "Thank you for everything." He never presented it to her, yet I understood it carried a significance far beyond a mere expression of gratitude. The atmosphere in the house became increasingly charged. One evening, as Anna departed, I caught sight of my husband by the window, his gaze fixed on her. I could no longer hold back my feelings. I approached him and inquired if there was something he wished to share with me. He turned to face me, his eyes steady yet somehow defiant. He assured me that I was overthinking and that all was well. But something was amiss. I felt like a stranger peering into my own family, where my husband, my son, and my tutor were all concealing truths that I didn't know how to confront. I realized I could no longer continue down this path. The condom wrapper, the coffee receipt, the sight of my husband entering the hotel with Anna, each of these fragments contributed to a larger narrative that demanded my attention. I resolved to confront Anna, to compel her to reveal the truth. I had lingered on the edge of revelation for far too long. The doubts, the contradictions, the clues I had meticulously gathered were now the final pieces of a puzzle yearning to be placed into the grander scheme. Yet, the truth is a heavy burden, one we often struggle to embrace, particularly when it emerges from those we hold dear. I had steeled myself for an answer, but nothing could have prepared me for the overwhelming wave of emotion that washed over me when everything was laid bare. I didn't wait long to see Anna. I selected a day when she wasn't teaching, reached out to her and expressed that I needed to meet for something significant. We decided to gather at a quaint cafe not far from my home, the very spot where my husband had first met her. I arrived early, chose a table in a quiet corner, holding my handbag tightly, as if it could shield me from the impending whirlwind of emotions. As Anna stepped inside, I could see the uncertainty reflected in her eyes. She scanned the room, as if searching for the reason behind this gathering. When she settled into her seat opposite me, she maintained a deliberate space, positioning her bag on the table like a barrier between us. I spoke plainly and directly. I revealed that I was aware of it all: the condom wrapper, the coffee receipt, the sights I had witnessed at the hotel. She remained silent, lowering her gaze. Yet her expression spoke volumes, affirming all that I needed to understand. Anna acknowledged her personal connection with my husband. She confessed that they had encountered each other beyond the school environment, yet she maintained that their relationship had not progressed any further. She expressed feeling ensnared in a situation she wished to escape, stating that my husband's affections were beyond her control. But what pained me the most was when she spoke of my son. She described him as special, expressing her desire not to cause him any hurt. Though her words were not direct, I sensed that she acknowledged my son's emotions and sought to maintain her distance. Yet, that effort was evidently insufficient. After my encounter with Anna, I realized that silence was no longer an option. That evening, as my husband walked through the door, I placed the condom wrapper on the table, accompanied by the coffee receipt and the truth I held. He was taken aback, his eyes brimming with bewilderment, yet he did not refute it. My husband confessed that he felt drawn to Anna. He described her as youthful, intelligent, and someone who brought a sense of renewal he hadn't experienced in ages. Yet, he firmly stated that their connection had never crossed into the physical realm. I find myself questioning that assertion. To me, the betrayal transcended the mere act. It was the emotions he shared with another that cut the deepest. As I grappled with the unfolding situation, my son inadvertently found himself a witness to the clash between my husband and me. He overheard our conversation, and when he stepped into the room, I could see the anger and disappointment reflected in his eyes. My son turned to my husband and inquired if he harbored feelings for Anna. He didn't pause for a response, for he already understood the truth. It dawned on me that he had been more perceptive than I had imagined. He had noticed the way his father looked at Anna, felt the shift in her demeanor. Yet, what pained him the most was the realization that he too had developed feelings for the very person his father had chosen to pursue. He exited the room, forcefully closing the door behind him. From beyond that barrier, I heard the sound of tears, a melody I hadn't encountered from my son since his infancy. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the house grew denser than ever before. My son distanced himself from both me and my husband. He ceased to mention Anna, no longer engaging in lengthy study sessions or light-hearted conversations. My husband, too, fell into silence, as if attempting to veil the events that had transpired. Yet, that silence could not conceal the widening chasm within our family. Anna never returned. She sent me a brief message expressing her regret for the situation and informing me that she would no longer be tutoring my son. I chose not to respond. Words eluded me as I grappled with my own feelings towards her. I understood that a decision was necessary. Yet, no matter which path I chose, scars would remain on me, on my son, and on my husband. A part of me yearned to forgive, to attempt to heal our family. But another part of me was unable to forget the betrayal, unable to erase the haunting image of my husband entering the hotel with Anna. As the truths emerged, I found myself amidst the remnants of my family. The shattered fragments of trust, love, and connection lay strewn about, and I questioned whether I could ever restore it all. Yet, one thing was undeniable. Life could not continue as it once had. Following the confrontation with my husband and the emotional eruption from my son, our home was enveloped in a haunting silence. My husband attempted to maintain a facade of normalcy, yet his eyes consistently shied away from mine. He refrained from mentioning Anna, offering no excuses or justifications. It felt as though he understood that any words spoken in this moment would only deepen the chasm between us. My son no longer ventured out of his room without purpose. He turned away from conversation and even distanced himself during family meals. One evening, as I entered his room to suggest dinner, I discovered him sitting silently by the window, gazing vacantly at the front yard. In that moment, I understood that his anguish stemmed not only from the emotional void, but also from the sense of betrayal he experienced from his own father. A week later, I chose to engage in an open conversation with my husband. The weight of anger and blame had become too heavy to carry. I simply sought the ultimate truth. Did he truly love Anna? My inquiry left him speechless. He confessed that his emotions for Anna were not love. They were a means of escape, a fleeting sensation he had misinterpreted as something significant. He pleaded for my forgiveness, expressing a deep desire to restore our family, promising to do whatever it took to mend the rift. Yet, despite the sincerity in his voice, the haunting image of him walking into that hotel and the messages I had uncovered lingered in my mind. I found myself questioning whether I could ever place my trust in him again. As my son began to share his thoughts, he unveiled emotions that were unfamiliar to me. One evening, he confided that he felt a sense of abandonment within our family. His heart ached not only for Anna, but also for the way his father had misdirected his love. I listened intently, coming to understand that his pain ran deeper than I had ever imagined. But through the pain, I also witnessed his transformation. He no longer spoke of Anna with a wistful or sorrowful gaze. Instead, he expressed a desire to concentrate on the exam, a determination to rise above this challenging time to demonstrate that he could take charge of his life. He declared that he would not allow the past to weigh him down, and I recognized that he was discovering the strength to rise from his own suffering. After countless sleepless nights, I came to understand that what I truly sought was not an escape from home or a taste of freedom, but a profound journey within myself. I didn't need to venture far. All the answers I yearned for were nestled within my heart, patiently awaiting their moment to be discovered. I began my journey by facing my deepest emotions. Rather than concealing or dismissing them, I dedicated time to penning my thoughts. I captured every ache, every instance of betrayal, and every flicker of joy that lingered from my years with my family. While writing it down didn't instantly alleviate the hurt, It allowed me to gain a clearer vision of the mosaic I was striving to create, a mosaic of my true self. I made a powerful choice to transform the way I engaged with those around me. I let go of being the woman who merely tolerated everything and began to articulate my needs and desires with clarity. I conveyed to my husband that I required his commitment not just to mend our relationship, but also to actively nurture it. I shared with my son the importance of respecting the feelings of others, regardless of the depth of his love for them. Instead of seeking transformation from the external world, I discovered that every path of renewal starts from within. I didn't have to depart from this home to uncover my true self. I simply needed to realign my place in my own existence. When everything fell into place, I understood that my journey was not about choosing between staying or leaving, but about embracing a new way of life for myself. I made the decision to hold off on forgiving my husband right away, yet I also refused to shut the door on our relationship. Instead, I opted to reconstruct from the remnants, but this time on my own terms. I presented a thoughtful compromise to my husband. We both needed to engage in marriage therapy to gain deeper insights into what had transpired. I didn't merely seek his apology. I yearned for him to genuinely grasp that the betrayal had not only shattered trust, but also undermined the very foundation of our family, painstakingly built over the years. He accepted without a moment's doubt. With my son, I embarked on a journey to guide him in navigating his emotions with greater maturity. I hold no judgment towards his feelings for Anna, for I recognize that first love often brings forth intense and challenging emotions. Rather than shielding him from heartache, I encouraged him to embrace the truth that sometimes loving someone means finding the strength to let go. I didn't attempt to return to the past our family once shared, for I understood that was unattainable. Instead, I embraced the opportunity to create a new way of life, one where every family member could flourish, learn from their missteps, and find the path to reconciliation. Next story. I had heard much about religion and faith, about how these close-knit communities could serve as sanctuaries for individuals to confront life's greatest trials together. Yet, I had never envisioned that a church, a space deemed sacred, could transform into a stage for deception and concealed suffering. I was not entirely an outsider. I had been woven into the fabric of this congregation, seated in the time-worn wooden pews, absorbing the sermons with unwavering trust in the pastor at the pulpit. The pastor stood as a figure of immense authority and influence within the community. He was cherished not only for his wisdom, but also for the heartfelt manner in which he conveyed his message of love and forgiveness. His family was a source of admiration for all, a kind-hearted wife and devoted children. Yet, behind that seemingly flawless exterior, there lay shadows that remained hidden until the day they were brought into the light. The room was filled to the brim that Sunday morning. The wooden chairs stood in perfect alignment, gentle whispers floated through the aisles, and the light streaming from the stained glass windows illuminated the already reverent ambience. It was a day of significance, yet not marked by the joy or excitement typically found in a gathering of the faithful. Whispers had been circulating throughout the week, hints of a big revelation the pastor was set to share. No one found the courage to voice their thoughts, yet all awaited with a blend of curiosity and apprehension. The pastor approached the pulpit, his expression more solemn than ever. He surveyed the congregation, his gaze lingering on each familiar face. A profound silence enveloped the room. In moments like these, silence can resonate more deeply than the loudest clamor. He began to share, his voice trembling yet resolute. He confessed to adultery, a heavy burden he had borne throughout his life. He spoke of vulnerability, of how swiftly one can stumble when they stray from their commitment to God and family. His words resonated deeply within the hearts of many. A gentle sigh reverberated through the room. Some began to weep, touched by his bravery in revealing his sins before all. He went on to share the essence of repentance, emphasizing how God is ever ready to embrace those who seek forgiveness. He earnestly sought forgiveness from his congregation, from his family, and from God himself. When he concluded, the room burst into a thunderous applause. It was a powerful and enduring sound, as if the gathering sought to express their unwavering support, recognizing that his bravery and sincerity deserved celebration. Some rose and joined hands in prayer, while others lowered their heads, their eyes brimming with tears. I found myself seated, observing my surroundings, feeling like an outsider amidst the throng. His revelations did not touch my heart. Instead, they stirred a sense of unease within me. It wasn't his remorse that unsettled me, but rather the manner in which he transformed his confession into a spectacle. There was an essence in his voice, a glimmer in his eyes, that led me to believe this was not true contrition, but rather a strategy to regain the favor of the congregation. The authenticity of his proclamation appeared shrouded in a veil of intent. But what astonished me most was the response of the congregation. Individuals I had anticipated would denounce his actions were swift to embrace forgiveness and celebrate him as a hero. They perceived his confession as a bold act, unburdened by the repercussions of his choices. The congregation was a tapestry of diverse souls. Reactions varied widely among them. While the majority rose to offer their applause, a handful remained seated, their expressions marked by confusion and unease. An elderly woman in the back row lowered her head in quiet reflection, her hands gently clasped in her lap. A young man in the corner leaned in to share a hushed word with his wife, his eyes betraying a flicker of anger. Yet they were but a small fraction. The resounding applause and fervent prayers drowned out any dissent, transforming the space into a tableau of near unity, though I sensed that this harmony was merely a facade. I sat in stillness, my heart weighed down as I observed the scene before me. This was the community I had once held dear, the individuals I had once embraced as a second family. Yet now they felt almost unrecognizable. How could they so swiftly absolve such a grave transgression? How could they perceive this admission as a noble deed, rather than a confession that demanded accountability? In that moment, I experienced a profound divide within myself, a disconnection from this community. The lessons of love, justice, and responsibility that had resonated with me over the years now echoed as hollow phrases. As the service concluded, individuals rose and encircled the pastor in a show of solidarity. Some placed their hands gently on his shoulders, offering whispered prayers. Others beamed with warmth, shook his hand, and assured him of their unwavering support. No one inquired about the woman he had betrayed. No one questioned the turmoil within his family. Their focus remained solely on him, on the narrative he had shared. I walked away from the church that day with a heart weighed down by sorrow. This tale transcends the journey of a single man and his missteps. It speaks to a community, to the choices they make in perceiving the truth. I find myself pondering, if the truth were altered, if his victim were the one standing in the pulpit today, would she be embraced with the same forgiveness and support that he received? The applause faded away, leaving the room enveloped in a profound atmosphere steeped in reverence. The congregation held their peace, some lowering their heads in prayer, while others exchanged whispers about the pastor's bravery and authenticity. Yet, this stillness was not destined to endure. A woman rose from the back row, her shoulders held high, yet her eyes revealed a storm within. I recognized her, a member of the congregation, typically a silent observer during the services, but never one to draw attention. She moved forward, calm yet confident. No one called out to her, no one hindered her path. Her presence charged the atmosphere. All gazes shifted toward her, and the pastor, who had just been greeted with warmth, instinctively took a step back. She paused just before the pulpit, mere feet from the pastor. He gazed at her, a flicker of confusion crossing his face, yet he swiftly regained his poise. She turned to the congregation, her voice resonating, gentle yet commanding. "This tale," she commenced, "is far more intricate than it appears." Without seeking approval, without pausing for consent, she pressed on with her narrative, and I noticed some members of the congregation shift uncomfortably, as if reluctant to hear what was to come. A profound silence, thicker and more intense, enveloped everyone. She describes her connection with the pastor as transcending a mere affair. It all started when she was just 16. In those days, she was a young girl, brimming with faith and admiration for the man who graced the pulpit every week. He was more than a pastor. He was a spiritual guide, a beacon of inspiration. At first, it appeared innocent. He frequently praised her, expressing how deeply devoted she was, how she possessed a unique bond with the divine. It made her feel cherished, as if she had been selected to fulfill a significant purpose within the community. Yet, over time, the attention took on an unsettling quality. He crafted reasons to meet her in private, often attempting to place his hand on her shoulder during moments of prayer. These gestures initially left her puzzled, yet he swiftly comforted her, affirming that they were perfectly normal. He expressed that this was his way of demonstrating care, emphasizing that there was nothing amiss with such emotions when viewed in the light of God. She expressed that as circumstances spiraled beyond control, he started to proclaim that their bond was sacred, divinely ordained for them to uplift one another through their challenges. He wielded his influence to sway her, instilling a sense that to decline was to turn away from God. She found herself ensnared in a labyrinth of deception and trepidation from which she felt there was no escape. He instilled in her the notion that all must remain hidden. He cautioned her that if the truth emerged, the community would rise against them both. He claimed she would be labeled a troublemaker, that her family would suffer, and even that God would feel let down by her. These veiled threats were powerful enough to shackle her to silence for years. She wasn't merely speaking of her own experience. She referred to others within the congregation who were aware, or at least had their suspicions. She shared that there were individuals who had seen him giving her excessive attention, yet they opted for silence. She recounted moments when she sought assistance, but rather than safeguarding her, they prioritized the church's reputation. "This is not merely my tale," she declared. "This is the tale of countless others who have been silenced by the same system." She spoke of another pastor within the congregation who had guided a youth group and was similarly reported for his actions. Yet, rather than addressing the issue, the congregation chose to transfer him to a different church, where he persisted in his behavior. When she concluded, an uneasy hush enveloped the room. No one rose to offer applause. No one uttered a word of commendation. Instead, whispers began to ripple through the pews. Some lowered their heads, seemingly evading her gaze. Others simply regarded her with discontent. One elderly gentleman even rose, shook his head, and exited the church. The pastor stood there in silence. He offered no excuses, nor did he express regret. Yet his eyes conveyed a powerful message: fear, confusion, and frustration as he witnessed the protective walls surrounding him start to fall apart. She stood resolute, confronting the sea of indifferent gazes. No one stepped forward to offer solace. No hand rested on her shoulder to convey solidarity. Yet, she did not lower her gaze. Though her voice quivered for a fleeting moment, her departure from the podium was unwavering. I could not fathom what fueled her bravery to stand before the assembly, but I recognized that she had chosen the path of righteousness, even if no one dared to acknowledge it. I leaned back, surveying the room. How could a space founded on love and compassion transform into a backdrop for such injustice and indifference? Why had those who once sat beside her, who prayed alongside her, chosen to turn away when she needed them the most? And will she transform anything? Or will the truth she unveils be concealed beneath a shroud of prayers for forgiveness that are meant solely for the resilient? When the girl returned to her seat, the room remained silent, yet it was no longer the respectful hush that had filled the air before. This silence was different, heavy and suffocating, as if the very breath had been drawn from the space. Each member of the congregation sat motionless, but the turmoil within them was unmistakable. Some averted their eyes, keeping their heads bowed, while others gazed ahead, caught in a web of confusion or disapproval. The atmosphere in the church thickened with an intensity that was palpable. The clapping had faded, and the soft whispers of prayer had ceased. Instead, a profound silence enveloped the space, draping it like an unseen veil. It was the silence of souls grappling with uncertainty, hesitant to voice their true thoughts or feelings. In the back pews, a handful of individuals shifted subtly, adjusting their stances as if to reveal their unease. A few pairs of eyes turned toward the pastor, who stood resolutely at the pulpit. The light streaming through the stained glass windows illuminated him, yet it did not enhance his presence in the eyes of the congregation. His posture remained upright, but the hands clasped before the pulpit quivered ever so slightly. A subtle yet unmistakable divide began to emerge within the congregation. Some remained transfixed on the pulpit, as if anticipating an explanation or a denial from the pastor. Yet that moment never arrived. He uttered no further words, took no action to clarify or contest. His silence, to some, could be perceived as a gesture of contrition. However, to others, it appeared to be a means of evasion. Some gazed downward, their hands intertwined in their laps, as if in prayer or striving to hold back their emotions. They struggled to accept the reality of what they were hearing. Years of faith in this pastor were not easily shattered. Yet, the young girl's words resonated with undeniable weight. In another corner, a small group of the congregation began to share knowing glances. Without uttering a single word, their faces were painted with disbelief. They could no longer persuade themselves that this was merely a minor error or a simple stumble. There was an unsettling quality in the way the pastor stood in silence, his lips sealed, that stirred their unease. They pondered whether his silence was a quiet recognition of the truth that had just come to light. The pastor stood at the pulpit, his shoulders squared, yet lacking the confidence they once held. He refrained from turning to the congregation, choosing silence over further defense. His gaze appeared distant, as if he were adrift in his own reflections. Though he remained still, his presence on the pulpit felt diminished, a stark contrast to the moment just before when he had basked in the applause following his heartfelt confession. His silence, once seen as a sign of humility or regret, transformed into an unsettling void. It offered no comfort or relief to those present. Instead, it deepened the atmosphere of suspicion and tension. Around them, individuals started to unveil their emotions in unique ways. Some maintained a stoic demeanor, their gazes locked straight ahead, as if grasping onto anything that would shield them from accepting the pastor's words. They resisted the notion that what the girl had just shared could be true, convincing themselves that perhaps it was merely a misunderstanding. But not everyone shared that perspective. Others straightened in their seats, their eyes scanning the room as if seeking a kindred spirit. Some wore faint frowns, as if attempting to connect the dots between what they had just heard and the hazy recollections of past encounters, words, and actions that had lingered in their minds, waiting to be acknowledged. At the rear of the church, a young woman quietly brushed away her tears. She spoke not a word, yet her expression revealed her sorrow. Perhaps she had endured a similar ordeal, or perhaps the weight of injustice was too glaring to overlook. The atmosphere in the church slowly grew heavier, a palpable tension hanging in the air. No one was willing to break the silence first. They exchanged glances, their eyes filled with unspoken questions that lingered in the space between them. Should they challenge the truth? Should they stand by the pastor? And would standing by him mean turning a blind eye to the anguish of the woman who had just shared her heart? Amidst the stillness, the girl sat resolutely at the back, her gaze unwavering on the podium. She neither lowered her head nor shifted from her place. She had spoken her truth, and though no one rose to support her, she understood she had acted with integrity. The truth did not require acceptance. It simply needed to resonate. As the service unfolded, a subtle rift began to emerge within the congregation. Though no one voiced it, I could feel that the faith was no longer as steadfast as it once was. Unanswered questions lingered in the atmosphere, like chilly breezes that whispered through every corner of the room. And I ponder, is this gathering, this community, resilient enough to confront the truth? Or will they opt to turn away from it, as they have in times past? After the victim stepped down from the pulpit and made her way back to her seat, an uneasy silence enveloped the church. This was not a silence born of respect, but rather one steeped in tension and conflict. A weighty atmosphere seemed to blanket the congregation as the young girl's words reverberated in their thoughts. They had gathered in search of forgiveness, hoping to find solace in the pastor's confession, yet they were confronted with a more profound and unsettling reality. A handful of individuals rose from their seats, departing with expressions of confusion and discomfort etched upon their faces. Silence enveloped the room, yet their movements spoke volumes of their desire to escape. They were unwilling to remain and bear witness to the turmoil that the young girl's tale had just unleashed. The others remained seated, yet their eyes shimmered with unease, grappling with the uncertainty of how to confront this moment. Those who stood steadfast beside the pastor sat tall, their eyes focused on him as if seeking direction. Though words escaped them, they yearned for him to stand, to provide an explanation, a rebuttal, or at the very least, a glimmer of reassurance for their faith in him. Yet, he held his silence, his hands gripping the pulpit, his gaze unwaveringly fixed ahead as if he could not bear to meet the eyes of the congregation. In another corner of the church, a small group began to share furtive glances. They remained silent, yet their faces revealed the profound impact of the young girl's story. Some clearly sensed the injustice in the way the congregation had treated her. Yet, even they lacked the courage to voice their thoughts. Years of unwavering loyalty to the congregation, to the very system the pastor embodied, had forged an invisible barrier that held them back from taking a stand. Yet the pastor's silence has planted seeds of uncertainty in the hearts of many. If he was genuinely innocent, why did he not step forward and share his truth? Why did he allow the congregation to grapple with questions that lingered without resolution? The service unfolded with a united prayer. A handful of devoted members rose, approached the pulpit, and knelt around the pastor. They lowered their heads, placed their hands upon him, and offered their prayers. Others, remaining in their seats, also bowed their heads in reverence. Yet not everyone joined in. Some sat quietly, their eyes locked on the pastor, as if seeking the truth in every gesture he made. The atmosphere shifted into an unusual realm. Prayers were lifted, yet they failed to deliver the solace or tranquility they typically provided. Rather, they illuminated the rifts within the congregation. A delicate yet potent chasm began to emerge, not just between those who rallied behind the pastor and those who questioned him, but also between those who sought to take action and those who opted for silence. The young woman sat quietly at the back, untouched by the world around her. No one came to her side, no one offered questions or words of encouragement. She held herself tall, her gaze unwavering, yet the solitude etched on her face was clear. Despite her reality, the community she had once called home offered her no compassion. Still, she chose to stay. Her silent presence in the room served as a profound testament to the events that had unfolded. As the service concluded, the congregation started to exit the church. Yet, in contrast to other gatherings, there was an absence of laughter or conversation beyond the doors this time. Instead, individuals departed in quietude, their gazes cast downward or lost in thought. The sense of togetherness that had once flourished within this community appeared to have been fractured. A handful of individuals approached the pastor with quiet determination, offering a firm handshake that spoke volumes. Though words were few, their eyes radiated unwavering loyalty. Meanwhile, others slipped away silently, avoiding both his gaze and that of one another, wrapped in their own thoughts. The young woman was the final soul to depart from the church. She moved gracefully through the grand doors, her gaze fixed ahead, never glancing back. In the face of solitude, she exuded tranquility, as if she possessed an unwavering certainty that she had chosen the right path, even if the world around her disagreed. As the church doors gently shut, I found myself pondering whether the community could rise above its divisions. Prayers had yet to yield the answers sought. The pastor's silence had done little to soothe the congregation's uncertainties. Meanwhile, the young girl's story, overlooked by so many, lingered as a wound that seemed impossible to mend. I may not know what lies ahead, but there is one certainty. The truth that has just been revealed will linger in our hearts and minds. It will weave its way into the consciousness of all, serving as a poignant reminder that even the most hallowed spaces are not shielded from mistakes and shadows. The church closed its doors early that day, yet the narrative continued beyond the departure of the congregation from the room adorned with stained glass. Outside, small clusters emerged, scattered across the lawn and sidewalk. The air was devoid of harmony and laughter. Whispers filled the space as people cast furtive glances toward the door, as if fearing that someone might catch their words. The events of the service swept through the congregation like a quiet tempest. Conversations began to spark among the members, though not all were candid. Some retreated to family kitchens and cozy living rooms, seeking refuge where they could speak freely. They found themselves divided into two distinct factions: those who held steadfast faith in the pastor, and those who began to question every action he took. The pastor's supporters believed the accusations stemmed from a misunderstanding or a deliberate effort to tarnish his reputation. To them, he embodies loyalty and faith, an unwavering beacon that cannot be dimmed. They persist in attending church, gathering for private prayer meetings to heal the community. The smaller yet more resolute group could no longer dismiss the young woman's words. They started to reflect on the actions they had observed but previously overlooked. A few even approached her, seeking deeper insights, yearning to grasp the truth. Yet, not all were open to listening. Some were merely driven by curiosity, indifferent to the suffering she had endured. The pastor stood in silence after the service, offering neither explanation nor rebuttal. Yet, the transformation within him was unmistakable. He grew more distant, shying away from lengthy discussions with the congregation. In the following services, his voice lacked the force and confidence it once held. On several occasions, he halted mid-sentence, as if searching for the right words to carry on. Some of his loyal supporters interpreted this as a sign of regret, believing he was grappling with his past errors. Yet for others, his silence only intensified their doubts. They started to question whether he was genuinely contrite or merely biding his time until the spotlight dimmed. The girl who found her voice at the ceremony now navigates the path of solitude within her own community. She seldom participates in gatherings anymore. Each time she steps forward, all eyes are upon her, not in admiration or compassion, but driven by intrigue and scrutiny. Still, she held no regrets. She understood she had made the right choice, even if it did not yield the relief or justice she had yearned for. She reached out for support, confiding in those beyond the congregation who could hear her story with open hearts and minds. Her narrative transcended the walls of the church. Some members of the congregation, who had once chosen silence, found their voices. They remembered the pastor's engagements with young girls in the community, the moments he lavished particular attention on certain individuals. Faint recollections sharpened into focus. One elderly woman shared that years ago, she had sensed something amiss but had hesitated to voice her concerns, fearing it would disturb the peace of the community. The small stories began to intertwine, creating a larger, more ominous tapestry. It was no longer a singular event, but a recurring theme, shrouded by the silence and devotion of those in his midst. The community had lost its sense of unity. Services became few and far between. Once warm gatherings turned into moments of unease. Even the steadfast supporters of the pastor found themselves grappling with the weight of the skeptical stares around them. Some proposed convening a community meeting to reflect on the events that had transpired, yet the notion was swiftly dismissed. Supporters of the pastor argued that it would only tarnish the church's reputation further. Meanwhile, others felt overwhelmed by the weight of the pressure. Though no official inquiry was initiated or charges brought forth, the tale circulated widely. A number of congregation members departed from the church, burdened with unresolved questions. They sought solace and justice in new places, yearning for the peace they had lost. The girl, despite her solitude, pressed on with her narrative. She did not merely condemn the pastor. She also brought to light the stories of other victims who had remained silent. She emerged as a beacon of bravery, not just within her former community, but to those beyond it who understood that the truth deserves safeguarding, regardless of the anguish it may bring. The church, once a beacon of unity and faith, now finds itself enveloped in suspicion and strife. The walls remain steadfast, yet trust has been fractured. However, within this turmoil lies a chance to reconstruct, guided by greater honesty and justice. And I ponder, will the truth that the young girl carries transform anything? Or will it merely be a fleeting spark, glowing for an instant and then snuffed out by the heaviness of silence and tradition? Time flowed on, yet the echoes of that service resonated profoundly within the hearts of the congregation. While many endeavored to reclaim their ordinary lives, the chasm remained visible. Each following service dwindled in attendance. Prayers grew heavier with unspoken burdens, and the truth that had emerged lingered in the shadows, unacknowledged. Yet, this silence was merely the surface of a swelling wave beneath. The pastor's authority had diminished, a shadow of its former self. His sermons grew brief, his voice devoid of its former strength, and his eyes frequently drifted away from the congregation. The burden of whispers and watchful eyes pressed heavily upon him. Each time he ascended the pulpit, the silence that enveloped the congregation transformed from reverence into an unvoiced judgment. Though a few steadfast supporters rallied to his side, Even they could not halt the tide of rumors from flowing. Some discreetly urged him to step down, to safeguard the church's honor and prevent additional harm to the community. Yet he remained, clinging to the hope that time would soften the doubts. Members who had once quietly departed from the congregation found their voices. No longer shackled by fear or hesitation, they began to share their experiences, their truths, and their feelings. One woman recalled a time years ago when she had observed the pastor showing an unusual interest in certain young girls within the congregation, yet she had remained silent, worried that speaking out might disturb the harmony. The stories began to weave into a tapestry, no longer mere whispers, but a profound narrative. The pastor's actions extended beyond a single young woman. Her journey became a beacon, inviting others to unveil the anguish they had concealed for far too long. The courageous young woman who had boldly voiced her thoughts at that service did not fade away from the community. After a time of reflection to safeguard her well-being, she emerged with a renewed strength. She participated in a congregational meeting, no longer lingering in the shadows, but taking her place in the center, where all could witness her resolve. She did not come to stir up discord, but to affirm her existence and remind everyone that the truth must endure. Her presence charged the atmosphere with intensity. Some averted their eyes, evading her gaze. Yet others, who had started to embrace her narrative, regarded her with admiration. She required no further words. Her mere existence was sufficient to rattle the very foundations of the justifications that some still endeavored to construct. At last, the weight of the congregation's concerns led to a community meeting. Everyone was welcomed, even those who had distanced themselves from the congregation. The small yet packed meeting room was filled with a palpable tension. All gazes were fixed on the pastor, who occupied the head of the table, appearing weary and strained. The meeting commenced with heartfelt prayers, yet they failed to provide solace. As the atmosphere shifted, individuals began to express their emotions, reflecting on their unwavering loyalty to the pastor, their sense of disappointment, and the pain they carried from recent events. Those steadfast in their support argued that he had acknowledged his wrongdoing and was worthy of forgiveness. However, dissenting voices emerged, asserting that mere confession fell short, and that his actions demanded more than forgiveness alone. The weight of the meeting and the unyielding accusations compelled the pastor to rise. He gradually, almost hesitantly, acknowledged that there was validity in the young woman's words. He did not refute everything, yet he did not fully concede either. His statements offered no solace or liberation. They merely illuminated the fact that the truth was far more intricate and agonizing than anyone was ready to confront. The meeting concluded without a definitive resolution. Some departed from the congregation permanently, bearing their disappointment and sorrow. Others chose to remain, striving to restore faith in the church and the community. The pastor stepped down shortly thereafter, leaving the congregation in a profound stillness. Yet the scars he left endure, affecting not only the victims but also the community that once embraced and upheld him. The young woman did not arrive to conquer. She did not come to cause upheaval, but to illuminate the importance of safeguarding courage and honoring the truth, regardless of its challenges. She understood that her journey was far from complete, Yet she had initiated a shift, however modest, in a system that had remained unchallenged for far too long. As the church gently progresses under the guidance of a new pastor, the congregation finds itself at a crossroads. The echoes of that difficult reality continue to linger in our hearts. And I ponder, will transformation truly unfold? Or will the shadows of silence once again envelop all? Next story. I have always envisioned Hawaii as a paradise, a realm that seemed to dwell solely in photographs or the depths of my most vivid dreams. Holding that plane ticket in my hand, I realized this was a monumental turning point in my life. After years of dedication, graduation, and navigating the challenges of daily existence, I finally granted myself the opportunity to begin anew. Hawaii would be the sanctuary where I rediscovered my true self. The moment I set foot in this enchanting place, I was spellbound by the splendor of nature. The sky unfolded in a brilliant blue, unmarred by a single cloud, while the expansive ocean reached out to the horizon. With each gentle caress of the salty sea breeze, I felt the burdens of the past dissolve, leaving me rejuvenated. The palm trees danced in the warm golden sunlight, and the charming cobblestone streets guided me to a vibrant coastal town brimming with life. But the dream faded away. As the afternoon drifted by in silence, I found myself alone in my temporary apartment, gazing out at the distant beach. A sense of emptiness began to seep in. I had anticipated exhilaration, yet instead, I felt isolated. No matter how stunning the landscape appeared, it could not fill the void in my heart when there was no one to share it with. In the early days of my journey in Hawaii, I found myself wandering through the charming little town that had become my sanctuary. The cobblestone streets, the quaint souvenir shops, and the inviting aroma of coffee wafting from the sidewalk cafes enveloped me in a sense of tranquility. Yet, I was a stranger in this place. The locals were engrossed in their own stories, while the tourists flitted in and out, savoring fleeting moments of joy before moving on. I sought to enrich my days by immersing myself in the local culture. I enrolled in a morning yoga class by the beach, yearning to forge connections with others. I ventured to the weekend flea markets, eager to shop and engage in conversation with the vendors. Yet, despite my efforts, loneliness continued to envelop me. In the quiet of night, within the solitude of my apartment, I encountered a profound sadness unlike anything I had ever known. One evening, I found myself gazing at my phone screen, contemplating whether to reach out to someone. Yet, there was no one to call. My family was miles away, and my friends were caught up in the whirlwind of their careers and lives. I began to question if relocating to Hawaii had been a misstep. Had I exchanged the comfort of stability for the allure of a distant dream? To overcome my loneliness, I made the choice to download a dating app. This was an action I never imagined I would take. I had always perceived app relationships as insincere and shallow. However, in Hawaii, where individuals appeared to linger only briefly, I came to understand that this could be my best opportunity to forge a meaningful connection with someone. I crafted a profile that captured the essentials: my name, age, and interests. I shared a photo of myself on the beach, believing that my cheerful smile would conceal the loneliness within. As I began to swipe through profiles, I found that most didn't strike a chord with me. Some were merely seeking a travel companion for a fleeting adventure, while others felt too far away or lacked genuine intent. Then I came across his profile. He had a warm smile, sparkling eyes, and a straightforward introduction, just relocated to Hawaii to begin anew, hoping to find someone to share this adventure with. His words resonated with me. I sensed a connection. We were both newcomers, both in search of something meaningful. I felt a connection with him, and in just moments he replied. Our conversation flowed, and I was captivated by his intellect and gentle demeanor. He shared that he was a tech engineer, had recently embarked on a new journey in Hawaii, and was staying with a friend. Those words brought me comfort. He wasn't merely a fleeting visitor, but rather someone like me, striving to create a fresh start. We chose to gather at a quaint cafe by the sea. I arrived ahead of time, settled beneath a tree, and gazed at the waves dancing upon the shore. A flutter of nerves coursed through me, not just because it was our first date, but also because I yearned for him to be the one to rescue me from my solitude. He arrived punctually, radiating warmth with a bright smile. Clad in a crisp white shirt and jeans, he embodied a blend of casual charm and elegance. He drew up a chair and settled across from me, and our conversation began to flow. I opened up about my work, sharing the challenges of navigating life alone in an unfamiliar place. He listened intently, nodding in understanding, and then shared his own tales from the world of engineering, recounting how he tackled complex challenges with ingenuity. His story resonated deeply within me. Our conversation transcended the boundaries of work. We exchanged dreams and passions. He shared his love for exploring the wonders of nature, his fascination with stargazing under the night sky, and his aspiration to one day visit the enchanting Hawaiian Islands. It fostered a sense of closeness, as if we were discovering shared paths in our journeys. The day concluded as the sun dipped below the horizon. We stood on the shore, witnessing the sunset paint the sky in vibrant shades of red. He turned to me and expressed how wonderful the evening had been. I smiled, a fresh wave of hope blossoming in my heart. Perhaps Hawaii was not just the sanctuary I sought for freedom, but also the land where I would discover someone truly special. The first date etched an unforgettable memory in my heart. He was not only intelligent and compassionate, but his way of expressing himself made me feel truly seen. Hawaii, with its breathtaking landscapes, felt like the ideal backdrop for the beginning of our journey together. Following that enchanting evening, our texts became more frequent. His heartfelt yet straightforward messages brought a smile to my face each time I glanced at my phone. We quickly arranged a second date. This time, he suggested a stroll through a nearby renowned tropical garden. As we meandered along the tree-lined paths, he shared more about his journey. He mentioned that he had departed from his job on the mainland in pursuit of a more tranquil life in Hawaii. I've always dreamed of living in a place where I could awaken and feel at ease, he said, his eyes sweeping over the beauty of the island. I shared my aspirations with him, to wander through islands, master the art of surfing, and discover a community where I truly belong. He listened with genuine interest, nodding and posing questions that made me feel valued. As we paused by a quaint waterfall, he retrieved a water bottle from his backpack and offered it to me. It was a simple act, yet it enveloped me in a sense of safety. Over the next few weeks, we embarked on a series of enchanting dates. Hawaii, with its sun-kissed beaches and towering mountains, served as the perfect canvas for our blossoming connection. One magical evening, he led me on a stroll along the shoreline. As twilight descended, the stars began to twinkle in the vast sky. He illuminated the constellations I had never seen before, sharing the stories behind each one with a fervor that captivated my heart. "It's a practice I embrace whenever I feel adrift," he said, gesturing toward the most radiant constellation. "Gazing at the sky, I am reminded that we are merely a tiny fragment of the universe. Our challenges, no matter their magnitude, are temporary." His words resonated within me. I felt as though I had encountered a kindred spirit, someone who could walk alongside me on my quest to uncover the wonders of life. We also enjoyed more relaxed outings, watching movies together, dining at quaint seaside restaurants, or simply sharing quiet moments as we gazed at the sunset. He had a remarkable talent for crafting experiences that made me feel cherished. There was a time when he surprised me with a home-cooked dinner at my place, featuring all my favorite dishes. He expressed that cooking was his way of demonstrating his affection, and it filled my heart with warmth. Even in the midst of apparent perfection, I began to sense an unsettling mystery surrounding him. There were moments when he would sidestep my inquiries, particularly those concerning his family or his history. On one occasion, I inquired about his roommate, a figure he frequently referenced. He smiled and replied that his roommate was an exceptionally busy individual, often absent from home. He always appeared to maintain a certain distance from me, as if he wished for me to know only a fragment of his true self. I endeavored not to dwell on it too much, reminding myself that everyone harbors aspects they prefer to keep private at first. Yet, there were moments when I reached out to him, inquiring about the days he chose not to connect, and he would merely respond that he was occupied. I also observed that he was quite aware of shaping my perception of him. He would share tales that painted him in an ideal light, like how he had come to the aid of a colleague in distress, or how he had declined a lucrative job to embrace a more modest existence. These narratives were charming, yet at times they left me with the impression that he was almost too perfect to be real. One evening, as we strolled along the beach, a mysterious man approached him and greeted him warmly. It was clear that the man recognized him, yet when I inquired about his identity, he merely smiled and mentioned it was an old colleague he preferred not to discuss. Nevertheless, his uneasy demeanor in the presence of this man began to stir a sense of discomfort within me. During that time, I observed that he took pleasure in inquiring about my daily schedule. He would ask me about the hours I worked and whether I had any plans for the weekend. Initially, I believed he was simply being thoughtful, but in retrospect, I recognized that he posed these questions with remarkable focus, as if he were striving to commit every detail to memory. Our relationship blossomed for several months, yet my insecurities began to intensify. I endeavored to cast aside the negative thoughts, reassuring myself that I was merely being unreasonably doubtful. However, one evening, a startling realization struck me. As he departed after our date, I noticed a key resting on the table. Initially, I assumed it was his house key, but when I inserted it into my apartment lock, a startling revelation struck me. It unlocked my door. A shiver coursed through me. Why did he possess my house key without uttering a word? I resolved to face him the next time our paths crossed, but when I inquired, he merely chuckled and claimed that I had handed him the key previously. I struggled to recall such an event, yet his composed demeanor led me to doubt my own memory. Still, a lingering sense of unease told me that something was amiss. That night began like any other, filled with the promise of shared laughter and joy. He and I had eagerly anticipated a new movie at a nearby theater, a romantic comedy that was meant to whisk us away into a world of lightheartedness. Yet, as the film unfolded, my attention drifted from the screen to him, who seemed preoccupied, frequently glancing at his phone. He sent a few texts, attempting to keep it under wraps, but my curiosity was piqued. When I inquired about what was troubling him, he flashed a reassuring smile, attributing it to a coworker in need of assistance. His words felt plausible, yet the shadows of my insecurities began to creep in once more. As the movie drew to a close, we exchanged our farewells in the parking lot. He waved, his face still adorned with the warm smile I had come to cherish. Little did I realize that a night of unforgettable moments was just about to unfold. About an hour after I returned home, a message from him arrived. He mentioned he was stranded outside his apartment as his roommate was away and he lacked a key. He inquired if he could come over to my place for the night. I felt a twinge of surprise, but given our history, I believed it was the right choice. I said yes. When he arrived, I observed that he was holding a small bag. Just a few personal items, he replied when I inquired. I didn't dwell on it, assuming he had merely packed essentials for the night. My intention was to offer him the sofa in the living room, and I endeavored to create a warm and inviting atmosphere. Yet, I maintained a respectful distance, informing him that I needed to retire early as I had work in the morning. Before stepping into the bedroom, I made it clear that if he required anything, he could easily find it in the living room. I also secured the bedroom door, a practice I had upheld since my days of solitude. Yet, a whisper of unease began to settle in my thoughts. I reminded myself that I was merely being overly cautious and that all would be well. About an hour later, a gentle knock on my bedroom door stirred me from my slumber. His voice floated in from the outside, requesting to charge his phone. I directed him to its location, encouraging him to retrieve it himself. I heard his footsteps resonate through the living room, followed by an enveloping silence. I attempted to close my eyes and drift back into sleep, yet the sense of unease continued to swell within me. 30 minutes later, he knocked once more. This time, he mentioned he was having difficulty sleeping and required an additional pillow. I guided him to the closet by the door, where I stored the spare pillow. He opened the closet, searching through its contents. However, instead of returning to the sofa, he began to wander around the living room, as if engaged in some task. The sounds were subtle yet distinct, and I found them impossible to overlook. Lying in bed, I absorbed the symphony of sounds outside. The noises were unpredictable, at times resembling the clanking of metal, at other moments echoing the rustling of paper. I attempted to reassure myself that he was merely organizing his belongings, yet deep down, my instincts whispered that something was amiss. I made the choice to reach for the phone and dial 911. I focused on maintaining a steady voice as I conveyed my feelings of unsafety in my home. The operator inquired if I was facing immediate danger, and I replied no, yet I expressed my desire for the police to come and assess the situation. They assured me that help would arrive within 10 minutes. As I waited, I secluded myself in my bedroom, securing the door and embracing silence. I could hear him distinctly in the living room. This time, it wasn't mere noise. He was conversing with himself. Fragmented phrases echoed, such as, "Everything must be flawless," and "Just complete this, and all will be well." A shiver ran through me. This had transcended the realm of normalcy. I approached the bedroom window, contemplating whether an escape was possible if the situation demanded it. However, my apartment was perched on the second floor, and descending from such a height would surely lead to grave harm. I resolved to remain in my room, patiently awaiting the arrival of the police. When I heard a forceful knock on the door and the policeman's voice urging me to open it, a fleeting sense of relief washed over me. Yet, that relief quickly faded as the tension surged back when I heard his voice reply. He attempted to maintain a calm demeanor, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his unease. After a few moments, I heard the door swing open and the rapid footsteps of the police. Their voices rang out, commanding him to raise his hands and comply. Then came the unmistakable sound of handcuffs clicking into place. An officer rapped on my bedroom door, urging me to unlock it. As I opened the door, the scene that greeted me filled me with dread. My living room was draped in large plastic sheets, reminiscent of the crime films I had watched. On the table lay a bag of medical supplies, cutlery, and numerous other items that I hesitated to examine closely. The police conveyed their suspicions that he was plotting a grave offense, and they emphasized that had I not made the call, the events of that night could have unfolded in a far more dire manner. As the police delved deeper, they uncovered that he was far more than merely a tech enthusiast, as he had professed. He carried a history of mental health challenges and had faced arrest for making threats and assaulting individuals. The notebook tucked in his pocket held meticulous notes on how to connect with me, from fostering trust to capitalizing on my solitude to forge opportunities. Police indicate that the contents of his pockets, along with the discoveries made in his living room, imply he might have been preparing for an exceptionally perilous act. Yet, his genuine motive continues to elude understanding. They remain uncertain if his intentions were to rob, assault, or even take a life. After the police took him into custody, I was invited to sit down and provide a thorough statement. Perched in the corner of the living room, a place that had just witnessed a horrific crime moments earlier, I felt as though the world around me had slipped into a surreal haze. The female officer settled beside me, attempting to soothe my rising panic with gentle reassurances, yet my thoughts remained scattered and unfocused. I recalled every nuance, from the messages he sent, to his plea to remain, to the peculiar noises in the living room. I also depicted the manner in which he conversed with himself, which I now understood carried a far more sinister implication than it initially seemed. Responding to the police's inquiries heightened my awareness of the peril I had narrowly evaded. They requested that I share more details about my connection with him, anything out of the ordinary that had caught my attention. I recounted the moments he evaded questions, the subtle discrepancies in his accounts, and the key I had discovered in my home. The police nodded, affirming that these insights were significant. A few days later, the police reached out to me once more, informing me that they had conducted a background check on him. What they uncovered sent a chill down my spine. He was not the tech expert he had claimed to be, but rather a man with a troubled past, marked by mental health issues and numerous arrests for threatening conduct. The notebook discovered by the police on his desk emerged as a crucial element in the investigation. Within its pages, he meticulously documented every move he made to reach out to me. Distinct lines revealed that he had been shadowing me for an extended period, even recording the times I typically ventured out, the locations I frequently visited, and my work routine. What's even more unsettling is that he didn't merely have intentions for me. The notebook contained the names of several other women, accompanied by similar notes. The police have stated they are reaching out to these women to verify if they were approached by him. What the police discovered in his pockets and on my living room table suggested that he might have been plotting a significant assault. The collection included scalpels, rope, duct tape, and even rubber gloves. The police clarified that these items were frequently associated with calculated criminal endeavors. The plastic sheeting that blanketed the living room floor is the detail that lingers in my mind the most. The police indicated it was a sign that he was ready to manage a clean crime scene. I find myself trapped in a nightmare, envisioning what might have transpired if I hadn't dialed 911. Moreover, the police discovered a USB drive tucked away in his pocket. This USB drive contained numerous documents and photographs of the individuals he had been surveilling, including covert images of me. These photographs were captured from afar, in locations where I remained blissfully unaware of the watchful eyes upon me. On the beach, at a flea market, and even from the window of my own apartment. During the investigation, law enforcement uncovered that he had participated in a required mental health rehabilitation program following a conviction for threatening another woman several years prior. In that instance, he had approached his victims in a comparable manner, fostering trust, feigning kindness, and then taking advantage of their loneliness to exert controlling behavior. Despite having undergone psychiatric treatment, records indicated that he often missed therapy sessions and exhibited signs of potential reoffending. Nevertheless, in the absence of solid evidence proving that he had inflicted real harm, he was not subjected to long-term detention. What unsettled me the most was the intricate planning. Authorities described him as intelligent and adept at creating convincing narratives to engage his victims. Those who were familiar with him characterized him as kind and diligent, yet this only heightened the sense of peril. He possessed the ability to mask his true self, leaving no one to question his intentions. Following that harrowing night, I found myself grappling with the shadows of post-traumatic stress disorder. Each knock on the door or echo of footsteps in the hallway sent waves of anxiety coursing through me. I became vigilant, checking the locks on my doors repeatedly, even in the stillness of the night, driven by the need to ensure my safety. I made the empowering choice to reach out to a therapist. In our sessions, I was inspired to express my feelings and document my experiences, allowing me to navigate through the storm of negative emotions. My therapist emphasized that by penning my story, I could reclaim my power and rise above the grip of my fears. The journey of recovery was far from simple. I often found myself haunted by dreams of him, nightmares where he loomed at my bedroom door, his eyes hollow and his smile chilling. I struggled to connect with those around me, perpetually wary of their motives. Each time a friend or colleague extended a hand of support, I questioned the authenticity of their intentions. As time passed, I discovered the strength to coexist with my past experiences. I came to understand that being watchful was not inherently negative. However, I recognized the importance of not allowing it to dominate my existence. Through therapy, I gained clarity that the burden of blame did not rest on my shoulders, and I had made the courageous choice to take proactive steps to safeguard my well-being. I also came to understand the significance of heeding my intuition. Had I dismissed that unsettling feeling that night, the outcome could have been vastly different. My journey serves as a reminder to myself and to those in my life that trust must always be paired with vigilance. In the days that followed, I found myself trapped in a relentless nightmare. My apartment, once a sanctuary of tranquility, had transformed into a realm of echoes. Even after the police had concluded their investigation and restored order, every corner whispered reminders of his presence. The creak of footsteps on the floor, faint sounds drifting in from outside, and the imagined gaze of unseen eyes lurking in the shadows. I found myself cultivating compulsive routines. I would check my locks repeatedly, not just once or twice, but occasionally 10 times in a single night. I kept every light in the house illuminated, both day and night, despite the soaring electric bill. I avoided windows, drawing the blinds tightly, as if the glow from within could expose me to anyone lurking outside. Every time I heard a knock on the door or footsteps in the hallway, my heart would skip a beat. There was a moment when my neighbor knocked to invite me to a small gathering, yet I found myself unable to open the door. The mere sound of that knock was enough to send me curling up in bed, my mind swirling with dreadful possibilities. After a few weeks of uncertainty, I came to the profound realization that I could no longer call this apartment my home. Hawaii, once a cherished dream, had transformed into a haunting reminder of fear and betrayal. Though it broke my heart, I made the courageous choice to move on. The journey of departing from Hawaii was far from simple. I needed to secure a new lease, gather my possessions, and part with items that no longer served me. Throughout it all, I felt as though I was escaping, not merely from this beautiful land, but from the memories that lingered in my mind every single moment. As I stepped onto the plane departing from Hawaii, I gazed out the window at the boundless stretch of azure ocean. Memories of afternoons spent admiring the sunset flooded my mind, those serene moments before life took a turn. Yet now, that beauty no longer wrapped me in a sense of security. I made the decision to relocate to a bustling city, where I could merge with the throngs and feel less noticeable. I discovered a cozy apartment nestled in a serene neighborhood, and began the journey of reconstructing my life from the ground up. Yet, the shadow of insecurity continued to linger by my side. Each day, I encountered small concerns that had never crossed my mind before. Who was lingering behind me on the subway? Why did the delivery person gaze at me for such an extended time? I discovered myself questioning everyone, constantly envisioning that they might be concealing some hidden motive. In my quest to rise above this challenge, I embarked on a journey of psychotherapy. Within those transformative sessions, I discovered the power to recognize and manage my negative thoughts. My therapist encouraged me to document my feelings and daily encounters, helping me to see that not everything was as perilous as I had once believed. One of the most significant hurdles in my recovery journey has been the process of learning to trust others. Following my experience with him, I felt as though everyone donned a mask, concealing their genuine intentions. I even found myself questioning longtime friends, pondering whether their sincerity was authentic. I began my journey with small steps. I enrolled in an art class close to home, a welcoming space where I could connect with others who shared my passions, free from the weight of expectation. Initially, I was quite shy, keeping to myself and observing from afar. However, as time passed, I found myself growing more at ease, opening up and sharing my thoughts and experiences with those around me. One day in class, I formed a friendship with a remarkable young woman named Sarah. She radiated warmth and authenticity, creating an atmosphere where everyone felt at ease. We began to share coffee outings after class, and she offered a listening ear as I poured out my concerns. Though Sarah didn't know every detail, her heart was free of judgment. She emerged as a vital companion on my path to healing. One day, I received a call from the police, sharing the news that he had been convicted and would face a lengthy detention due to the undeniable evidence of his plan to harm me. While I felt a sense of relief knowing he was no longer a threat, the haunting look in his eyes and the chilling smile he wore that night remain etched in my memory. My therapist encouraged me to face my fears by chronicling the entire narrative, capturing every detail from the moment I encountered him to the instant the police took me into custody. Initially, this process was deeply unsettling. Agonizing memories surged forth, as if I were experiencing that dreadful night all over again. Yet, as time passed, writing transformed into a powerful outlet, allowing me to release my emotions and find clarity in the chaos of what had transpired. 2 years after that challenging chapter, I sense that I have traveled a significant distance. Although the scars may never fully fade, I have discovered how to coexist with them. I still hold on to certain mindful practices, such as ensuring the door is locked before I sleep, yet I no longer feel pursued by the shadows of the past. I embarked on a journey of blogging, unveiling my story to the world. I received countless messages from individuals who had traversed similar paths, and in those moments, I discovered the profound truth that I was not alone. In extending my hand to help others, I found a wellspring of strength within myself. Now, as I stand before the mirror, I no longer see the fragile, fearful woman I once was. I see a warrior, someone who has triumphed over the harshest trials to rediscover her true self. Though 2 years have slipped by, I understand that the past lingers on. Occasionally, I find myself haunted by his chilling stare or the echo of that fateful knock on the door. These memories no longer grip me with the same fear, yet they serve as a poignant reminder that life can transform in the blink of an eye. In moments of anxiety, I find myself pondering, what brought me to this point? How did I overlook it earlier? Yet, rather than succumbing to self-reproach, I have embraced the understanding that there are times when we cannot dictate every outcome. What truly counts is our response and the wisdom we glean from the journey. In my new city, I started to embrace a deeper connection with the community. New friends, such as Sarah, illuminated my path and eased my sense of isolation. I also embarked on a journey of volunteering, supporting women who had faced violence or abuse. Their powerful stories revealed to me that I was not alone, and that within each of us lies the remarkable strength to rise above challenges. I also discover happiness in writing. My blog serves not only as a platform for sharing my journey, but also as a beacon of hope for countless others. The uplifting responses and heartfelt gratitude from readers empower me. One day, a woman reached out to me via email. She shared that she had liberated herself from a toxic relationship after encountering my story. "Thank you for sharing," she expressed. "Your story gives me hope that I can thrive as well." As I read her words, tears filled my eyes. I understood that my journey, though filled with pain, held a purpose. One of the pivotal moments in my recovery journey was embracing the challenge of confronting my past. Although he was behind bars, I understood that his imprisonment did not erase the fear that lingered within me. I made the empowering choice to participate in a victim support program where I found the strength to share my story with others who understood. At a gathering, I encountered a wise woman who had faced similar challenges. She shared that despite the passage of time, she continues the practice of securing all her doors each night. "But that doesn't signify weakness," she asserted. "It's simply my method of safeguarding myself." Her words illuminated the truth that it's perfectly acceptable to take precautions, as long as I refuse to allow fear to dominate my existence. One day, as I strolled through the park, I caught sight of a man who bore a striking resemblance to him. My heart plummeted, and I felt as though time had stood still. Yet, when the individual turned to face me, I understood that it was not him. Nevertheless, that moment illuminated the truth that I was still being pursued by shadows of the past. Rather than shying away from my emotions, I chose to engage in conversation with my therapist. She guided me to realize that experiencing fear does not equate to weakness. "Fear is not your adversary," she shared. "It's simply a facet of your being. The key is to ensure it doesn't dictate your actions." Over time, I gradually rediscovered tranquility in my life. The compulsion to check the locks 10 times each night faded away, and I started to embrace the connections with those around me. I also discovered the power of forgiveness. Not for him, but for myself. I learned to forgive the moments when I overlooked the warning signs, to forgive the innocence that had left me exposed. My journey has transcended the mere act of overcoming a traumatic event. It has blossomed into a profound quest for self-discovery. I am no longer the fragile, isolated woman I once was upon my arrival in Hawaii. I have evolved into a resilient individual who recognizes my value and boldly advocates for myself. My journey does not conclude with fear or suffering. It concludes with hope. Hope that anyone facing adversity can discover light at the end of the tunnel. Hope that we are never isolated and that there are always individuals ready to lend a hand. One afternoon, as I sat by the window, captivated by the sunset painting the sky in hues of red, a profound sense of tranquility washed over me, a feeling I had long missed. Hawaii, with its bittersweet memories, became the backdrop for a powerful revelation. Life may present us with trials, yet we possess the strength to rise and thrive against any adversity. As I gently close the notebook that holds the essence of my journey, I recognize that I have finished a significant chapter in my life. With courage and unwavering faith in myself, I stand poised to embrace the next adventure that awaits.